What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was abandoned and adopted by a demon king? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. The Demon Lord is coming. Welcome to the remade first chapter of Demon King Naruto. I own nothing but the tail. Naruto, it's time for you to leave the village. As these words were spoken by the Hokage, Tsunade Senju, Naruto Uzumaki looked up at the Hokage with his eyes widened in surprise. He opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. It seemed so unreal, as if he was in some type of sick nightmare. You see Naruto, after the Hokage summit, the nations agreed on hiding you in order to protect you from the remaining Akatsuki members, who consist of Madara Uchiha. Naruto's eyes narrowed angrily at the mention of the man who is responsible for his best friend Sasuke's sudden change of direction. But why after I was the one who defeated Pain? Naruto interrupted as Tsunade looked over at Shizune, who looked down at the floor. Naruto, they just think it would be best if you were to leave the village for the time being, Shizune explained as Naruto's fist tightened at the side of his body. Naruto, remember that the Kyuubi is beginning to have more of an impact on your body due to the unleashing of the 8 tails when you fought against Pain. Tsunade insisted as she rubbed her temples in aggravation. Due to this, your chakra level has become dangerously high, plus with the addition of your Sage chakra, who knows what will occur next time you get that angry. Also remember Naruto, soon you will face Madara Uchiha, plus the one who you have desperately been trying to save. Naruto's eyes wandered to the floor as Tsunade said this, the image of Sasuke Uchiha in his mind. He continued to look down, contemplating the idea of leaving the village for who knows how long. Naruto's eyes welled up with tears as Shizune and Tsunade both looked away, barely able to stay strong for the blonde-haired shinobi. Sakura, Master Kakashi, everyone, Naruto muttered as tears rolled down his cheek, Naruto looking up at Tsunade. Ba-chan, what should I do? Tsunade opened her mouth to speak, at first knowing exactly what to say. But as her eyes looked down at the small necklace around his neck, she remembered why she stuck up for Naruto in the first place. His ambitions ran deep, his heart pure. His mind was deep in thought as he looked up at Tsunade, knowing what he had to do. Fine, I guess I have no choice then, Naruto murmured softly as his eyes closed tightly. He wiped the tears from his face as he forced upon a smile on his face. That's a very mature way to look at things, Naruto, Tsunade remarked with a bright smile as Naruto kicked over the trash bin next to her desk angrily. Well, he grew up a little bit I guess. Naruto sighed loudly as he sat down at the Ichiraku ramen shop along with his sensei Iruka. Iruka was like a father to the young shinobi, Naruto going to him whenever he had a problem. So, are you okay Naruto? Iruka asked softly as Naruto pushed away his ramen, looking glumly at the large bowl. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Naruto snapped as he looked up at the night sky, wishing everyone would stop asking him. It had seemed like the entire village had found out in less than 3 hours that Naruto would be leaving the village the next morning. Iruka had invited Naruto to ramen. Tsunade had offered to go with him to Ichiraku's as well. Neji and Rock Lee offered him to go training with them. Sakura looking at him with the same sad, depressed look every time she seen the shinobi. Naruto, are you paying attention? Iruka asked as Naruto looked up from his thoughts, smiling sheepishly as he shook his head no. Same old Naruto? Iruka thought with a small grin as he placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Anyway Naruto, I was saying that you should honestly think of this as some type of blessing, as sad as it is. You're going to be going to one of the most prestige academies of magic and arts that had ever been established. Going to this school will allow you full control of the Kyuubi, which is what you want, right? Of course sensei, Naruto replied as he broke his chopsticks apart and slurped on the ramen before him. But I don't even do magic. I'm a shinobi, not some stupid magician. Besides, how could magic help me control a demon? It's not technically magic, it's called mana, Iruka explained as he stroked his chin. It's another source of life energy besides chakra. Only specific people have mana within their body. Tailed beasts are known to have a vast amount of it. So if you master the mana of the Kyuubi, you master chakra control of its chakra as well. Do you understand? Not really, but whatever, Naruto muttered as he finished the bowl of ramen and slammed the bowl down. I guess it's okay, but I'm not really happy about it to be honest. Naruto, you are the hero who defeated pain, don't you remember? Iruka asked as Naruto nodded with a confused expression on his face. Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything? Naruto replied as Iruka smiled knowingly. Naruto, you had the power to defeat the leader of the Akatsuki and save the entire village. Iruka explained as Naruto gave a small smile. I know that you can handle this, and I have faith in you that you will return and save us again. Besides, the ramen just wouldn't be as good without you. Naruto grinned broadly as tears streamed down his face. He gave Iruka his signature thumbs up as he got up from the restaurant and went back to his home, Iruka watching him with a warm smile. Go get Naruto. As Naruto entered the station area, he looked around in awe how things had suddenly changed so abruptly. The world around him was completely different from his village, the vibrant colors and high-grade technology all around him. He smiled broadly as he picked up his suitcase from the ground and continued on his way to the train to Constant Academy. As he stepped out onto the floor with all the people passing, he looked and spotted an old woman trying to drag her bags up the escalator. Naruto dropped his own suitcase and went running up to the woman to give her assistance. Would you like a hand? Naruto asked politely as the old woman nodded with beads of sweat going down her forehead. Naruto took the bags from the old woman and took them up the escalator, the old woman watching him with a smile. After getting up the escalator, the old woman reached out for her bags, Naruto pulling them away with a smile as he put his hand out with reassurance. Don't worry, I can take these the rest of the way, Naruto assured as the old woman shook her head no, smiling as she tried to take the bags back. As Naruto tried to insist on taking the bags, he sensed an extremely high level of power, possibly something other than chakra. Naruto looked over as a young woman with bright blue hair appeared out of nowhere, wielding a long katana. She was quite beautiful in Naruto's opinion, wearing what looked like some type of school outfit. The same type of outfit Naruto had in his suitcase. The young girl angrily tried to kick Naruto in the face, Naruto ducking. As he looked up, he spotted that the girl wasn't wearing any underwear or panties, but instead some type of wrap that didn't leave much to the imagination. The girl looked down as she spotted Naruto looking up, covering her body in embarrassment. So, you aren't just a robber, but a pervert as well. The girl screamed as she went charging at Naruto. Naruto looked over with surprise as the old woman grabbed the girl's shoulder, the girl looking back in surprise as well. Junko, please relax dear, the old woman muttered softly as she wrapped her hand around the girl's sword hand. Put that away now while we are in the airport girl. The girl called Junko bowed her head in shame as she sheathed her sword at her side and looked up at Naruto with a skeptical expression. Why the hell are you even here for? Junko asked as Naruto shrugged, the old woman looking at Junko disapprovingly. I mean, I'm Junko Hattori. And you are? Naruto Uzumaki, at your service. Naruto exclaimed as he put out his hand enthusiastically. Junko looked down at his hand suspiciously, before taking his hand and shaking it. The old woman smiled as she excused herself, walking away as the two strangers looked at each other down. So, are you going to Constant Academy or something? Junko asked as she followed Naruto to go get his suitcase. You don't seem like the kind to go there. I'm a newbie, but I hope to get to learn to control mana, Naruto explained seriously as Junko looked at him with surprise. She smiled brightly, starting to actually like this kid a little bit. As they walked back to the docking station, they spotted a large train that had the words, Constant Academy, pasted on the front in large neon letters. That's our ride, Junko shouted as she grabbed Naruto's arm and pulled him toward the train, Naruto letting her pull him with a smile. As they rode on the train, Naruto continued to look around the train with awe, gawking at all of the advanced technology around him. Naruto looked at Junko excitedly as she looked back at him with a bored expression. Are you actually bored right now, Hattori? Naruto asked, unable to hide his surprise. How could you be with all of this amazing technology? Just where the hell rock did you crawl out from, Naruto? Junko asked skeptically as her eyebrow raised slightly. A pretty large rock, Junko, Naruto explained as he pulled out his ninja headband from his carry-on bag. This is my headband, which represents the village that I come from. You see, I'm actually a ninja from the village of Konoha. Junko looked at him in shock as she looked into his blue eyes, seeing that much had occurred in the blonde boy's life. She smiled broadly, unsheathing her sword from her side. Naruto put his hands up in protest as Junko shook her head no. Please pull out the sword like this, Junko explained as Naruto looked at her skeptically. We both pull out the sword like this, meaning we enter a sacred pact. The pact will be that we be successful in everything that we do and dream of. But it also means something else. What else does it mean? Naruto asked with an excited grin, Junko blushing even harder now. It means we will always be friends, Junko answered as Naruto smiled brightly and placed his hand on the sword. They both pulled the sword as they smiled at each other, making Junko blush a furious red. But as they did this pact, they knew they would be good friends. As Naruto and Junko entered Constant Academy, it almost astounded Naruto. The place was huge, the advanced technology almost staggering. All of the students were heading toward the nurse's office, where all the students were waiting in line for registration. Okay, everyone please line up quietly to get tested, the nurse shouted as she looked down at a small clipboard. She began to call names as Naruto looked at Junko in confusion. What's going on here? Naruto whispered to Junko as she gave him an obvious look. It's the aptitude test that explains what you are going to do for a job when you are older, Junko whispered back. Naruto Uzumaki, you are up next, the nurse announced as Naruto gave Junko a quick thumbs up. He walked up to the nurse as she guided him to some strange-looking bird that stood on top of a desk. I am Yata Garasu, the school spirit. The thing introduced itself as Naruto looked at it with widened eyes. I will tell you your future. Hokage is the only thing in the cards for me, Naruto exclaimed as Junko shook her head behind him. So, bring it on bird. Yata nodded as it began to analyze him. It looked at him strangely before announcing Naruto's future job. Demon Lord, Yata announced as everyone in the room gasped in shock. Wait, what? Naruto asked in confusion as he looked back at Junko, who was looking at him in horror. The nurse came running up to Yata as she looked him directly in the eye. Can you please repeat that? The nurse asked as Yata nodded. Naruto Uzumaki shall become the Demon Lord, Yata repeated as Naruto looked at it with his mouth wide open. That doesn't sound too good. Naruto moaned as he felt the eyes of everyone in the room on him. As Naruto stood there dumbstruck, the nurse rushed the other students out the room, turning around and giving Naruto a kind smile. Well, Demon King huh? The nurse said, sitting down in her chair and looking at Naruto with an interested look. That is a very interesting position indeed. It sounds like I'm going to become some type of demon, Naruto growled, trying to keep himself calm. Is that what your stupid spirit is saying? Do you know how many people I protected? I am a hero in the village I come from. Yata Garasu has never been wrong with a prediction, the nurse replied, chewing on the bottom of a pen. You are going to be the Demon Lord. The hell if I am. Naruto shouted, standing up and walking to the door. Wait, the nurse shouted, walking up to Naruto with a concerned look. You will probably be destroyed by the government once they find out you are the Demon Lord. Can you sign this consent forms that says I can dissect your body when you die? I would love to see what your insides look like. Naruto looked at her with a blank look before he grinned brushed his hair back. I won't die so easily, Naruto replied as he opened the door and walked out the room. Darn, I hope he signs before they annihilate him, the nurse said, sighing loudly. Deep inside his mind, Naruto stands at the cage of the Nine Tails, not knowing what to do. Pathetic piece of garbage, the Nine Tails growled, looking at Naruto with an amused look. You should be thankful for having the honor of becoming the Demon Lord. I heard he ruled the normal human world with an iron fist. You shall become the next person to do this, the newest demon of batch. The Nine Tails grinned evilly at Naruto as Naruto looked at it with a sickening look. I personally take credit for you being a Demon Lord. Without me, you could never achieve such greatness. You should also thank your precious fourth Hokage. His foolish mistake shall give birth to the strongest Demon Lord this world will ever see. The Nine Tails began to laugh as Naruto stood there, not knowing what to say. Don't fret you little whelp, the Nine Tails continued, smiling even bigger. I shall assist you in becoming the Demon Lord. With my chakra and mana, I will make you into a true demon. Shut up, Naruto screamed as he looked at the Nine Tails with a dark look. You can say that I'm going to become this Demon Lord, but I won't ever become this. Go to hell. As Naruto looked up, he was sleeping in class and everyone was staring at him with hated looks. It's like being back in time, Naruto muttered as he put his head back down and looked at the board. The teacher was teaching the students about the control of mana and how to use it in a sensible way. Should the demon lord be learning how to use mana? One of the students asked, looking back at Naruto. Naruto gave him the finger as the teacher looked at Naruto with a frown. Now let's not do things like that, Naruto, the teacher said, looking at Naruto with a stern look. You are not going to act like a demon in my classroom. Okay, that is enough. Naruto shouted, standing up and looking around. Understand this, classmates. I am not a demon lord. I am not a monster, I am a normal person. Enough of this. Junko screamed, standing up from her seat. Naruto looked at her with a smile, as she turned and looked at him with an angry look. That's not good, Naruto thought nervously, backing up a bit. She has the same look Sakura has when she gets mad at me. You tricked me, Junko said, balling her fists as she walked up to Naruto, unsheathing her sword. We did a sacred oath and you broke it. There is something I didn't tell you when we were going over it. If you were to betray our friendship, I get to kill you. Talk about fine print, Naruto said with a smile. Look, I didn't betray you. I would never betray a friend, Hattori. Leer, Junko screamed, putting her sword in front of her. I won't allow you to trick me anymore, Demon King. Is she allowed to do this? Naruto asked, sweat starting to drip down from his forehead. He looked at the teacher, who had her head buried in a book. According to Tei Handbook, yes she can, the teacher said, still reading. Since it is part of her religion, we cannot stop her. Okay, this is getting bad, Naruto said as Junko prepared her sword. She ran at him and began to swing widely, Naruto easily dodging it. He ducked from an incoming slash and did a back flip as Junko tried to stab him on the ground. He then jumped against the wall and landed on a desk as Junko tried to attack him again. She gasped as he did this and looked at him even angrier. Well, I guess me doing that wasn't exactly proving I'm not a freak, Naruto sighed as he dodged another sword slash. Junko finally got to the point of eruption and ran at Naruto with her body glowing a light blue. Is this the power of mana? Naruto wondered as Junko tried to attack him again and this time succeeded. As her sword infused with mana touched Naruto's arm, red mana began to escape from the wound and cover all over Naruto. Naruto looked at this in surprise as all of a sudden, he put his hand out and red mana came out in a ball, hitting Junko and shredding all of her clothes as she stood there naked. Naruto looked at her with his mouth opened wide, not knowing what to say. Blood began to trickle down his nose as Junko looked down at her body slowly and began to scream. She covered herself with her hand and ran out of the classroom. That was awesome. A boy screamed, standing up and running over to Naruto with envy in his eyes. You are way too strong. I am your new little brother, Hiroshi Miwa. My new little brother? Naruto asked, looking at Hiroshi with a confused look. That's right, big brother. Hiroshi shouted, standing by Naruto as everyone looked at him. I want to be your number one disciple. Show me your strength. Naruto smiled as he looked at Hiroshi. He had always wished back in the days when the village hated him that he had at least one friend out of all the people who was there. One friend that didn't care about that he was a monster. Just one person he could call his friend. Fine, but you better be ready, Hiroshi. Naruto exclaimed as Hiroshi looked at Naruto with a bright grin. Later that day, as Naruto and Hiroshi walked around the campus, Naruto wondered what happened to Junko after she left. She hadn't returned to the classroom, and Naruto was beginning to get worried about her and if she was okay. But, he had no idea how to get in contact with her. Naruto continued to think until he almost ran into a purple-haired girl. Oh, sorry, Naruto murmured as he continued walking. Are you Naruto Uzumaki? The girl called after him, running up to him quickly. Naruto nodded as Hiroshi turned him around and looked at him with a sly look. You don't waste any time, do you, big brother? Hiroshi said, slapping Naruto on the back. That's Fujiko Ito, the most popular and pretty girl in school. Naruto turned back around as Fujiko looked at him with a friendly smile. Yes, that is me, Naruto said, wondering what she could want with him. Oh, it is so good to meet you, Naruto. Fujiko gushed as she grabbed Naruto's hand and Naruto began to blush as she did this. I'm Fujiko, and if there is anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask. Just message me on the network. The network? Naruto asked with a confused look. That sounds like some type of magic? Well, it is, Fujiko explained, pulling out her student handbook. You put this against your head and use it like a phone, see? Then you thought message the person who want to talk to. Wow, this technology, Naruto said, looking at the student handbook with awe. Do you think I could message my friend Hattori with this? Junko Hattori? Fujiko asked, looking at Naruto with a knowing smile. Is that your girlfriend? Absolutely not. Naruto screamed, his face red. I just want to apologize for an incident that happened earlier. How about I talk to Junko for you? Fujiko said, touching Naruto on his shoulder. I'm sure I can help straighten it out. Why don't you go see her at the girls' dorm? I can do that? Naruto said, looking at Fujiko happily. That will be perfect, thank you. Fujiko turned away from Naruto's view and grinned evilly. No problem at all. As Naruto sneaked out of his bedroom, he watched as he climbed out his window by walking right down the wall using chakra and ran towards the girls' dorm. As he got to the area, he used chakra to run up to one of the windows, looking for Junko's room. He looked into one of the windows as the window opened and Naruto got kicked in the chest. He fell to the ground as he held his stomach and looked up to see Junko holding her sword to his neck, looking at him angrily. He also see that she was wearing next to nothing, which made him stare a bit. Junko angrily covered herself as brought her sword down at Naruto's head, which he barely dodged. He then watched as she tried to use her mana to attack him again, but he countered by grabbing her arm and looking at her with a desperate look. Listen to me, Hattori. Naruto screamed. I didn't mean to do that to you earlier. You embarrassed me, Naruto, Junko said slowly, looking at Naruto with a fierce expression. I will kill you to bring back my honor. She tried to bring her sword down at Naruto again, but suddenly, there was a huge explosion. Naruto looked up as Junko laid to the side of him, her clothes blown off as he looked and seen a green-haired girl looking at him. Junko Hattori has been restrained for the minute, the girl said, holding a huge cannon. What the hell? Naruto screamed as he began making hand signs and the girl looked at him with a confused look. Enough, Naruto Uzumaki, she said, putting her cannon down. Naruto stopped and looked at her in surprise. I am Kurone, and I am your observation agent sent by the government. Has the village sent an agent to destroy Naruto? Find out next time. I know that I'm not sticking to the script completely, but trust me, stick around for the ride. It seemed as things were going from bad to worse, as Naruto now found himself in front of a girl with a large cannon, calling herself Kurone. As Naruto wondered what he should do or say, Kurone spoke up again. Like I said, I was sent by the government to watch you, Kurone said, looking at Naruto with a blank look. Do not try to resist or I will use force. What the hell did I do? Naruto shouted, looking over at Junko, who was still passed out. You hit her with a cannon. I had to, unless there was a chance you could have injured her, Kurone replied, putting the cannon into a small bag. Naruto watched this in confusion as he wondered how the hell she just did that. Then he dismissed it when he remembered she just tried to blow up his friend. Look, agent or not, no one hurts my friends, got it? Naruto snapped, looking at Kurone directly. She looked back at him, still with a blank look. I am not here to listen to you, Kurone said as she walked into the ditch past Naruto. Naruto watched her with the eyebrow raised as she walked to Junko and began to check her over. She flipped her over with her still being naked and Naruto began to blush feverishly. What the hell are you doing now? Naruto shouted, turning away quickly. Why are you flipping her over? Kurone used some type of magical item on Junko, making her awake instantly. Junko looked around slowly, wondering what was going on. Naruto then turned around as Junko looked at him and he looked back at her. Junko then looked down at herself, seeing she was naked and turned a bright red. Naruto opened his mouth to say something, but didn't waste his time. Why even waste my damn time? Naruto thought as Junko freaked out and ran away, screaming pervert at Naruto. Naruto sighed and looked over at Kurone, who was just standing and looking at him. You are really creepy, Naruto said as he walked back to his dorm, wondering why he was the one always in these situations. As he got back to his dorm, he laid on his bed, looking at the ceiling, thinking about the village and everything that had happened since he came to Constant Academy and sighed. I wish I could have at least stayed at the village for just a while longer, Naruto thought out loud, taking a kunai from his dresser and twirling it around on his thumb. You shouldn't talk to yourself, people might start to wonder, a voice suddenly said. Naruto dropped the kunai and looked around the room as he looked at the closet. He walked over slowly, not knowing what to do as he opened the door and Kurone was laying on the top of the closet. "What the hell are you doing in my room and in my closet?" Naruto screamed as Kurone jumped down and sat on Naruto's bed. "I told you, I've to watch you 24/7, Kurone said, jumping up and down a bit as she sat down. "What is that on your dresser?" "My favorite ramen in a cup, why?" Naruto asked in an annoyed voice. "Don't you have somewhere else you can watch me? I'm not a child, you know." "Yes, you are legally," Kurone said as she picked up the ramen and began to poke it. "Stop that," Naruto shouted as he snatched the ramen away. "You really are very annoying." "That is my job," Kurone replied, laying back on Naruto's bed. "So, can I sleep on here with you?" "Excuse me?" Naruto said, after taking a big bite of ramen and choking on it. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" Kurone asked innocently. "You are a man, I am a woman. Doesn't that turn you on? Or do you go the other way?" "The other way?" Naruto shouted, looking at Kurone with a dumbfounded look. "Are you asking if I am gay?" "Yes," Kurone confirmed, picking up the kunai off the ground and messing with it. "If my records are correct on you, you spent over 3 years training so you could rescue a male named Sasuke Uchiha. Am I correct?" "Well, yeah," Naruto said, looking down. "But he's my best friend and he fell in the hands of evil." "So you did all that for a male?" Kurone asked, sitting up. Naruto rubbed the back of his head as he shook his head yes. "I see, so maybe I should call and see if they can send a male." Kurone said. "I am not gay." Naruto screamed, dropping his ramen on the floor. "Why are we having this conversation? Look, you cannot sleep on my bed with me and that is final." "I wasn't planning to," Kurone replied, getting up and opening the closet door. "I will sleep here for the time. But remember, I will always be watching you." Naruto turned off the light once Kurone got in the closet and jumped into bed, taking a deep breath. He looked over at the closet and seen eyes watching him. "So you are going to do that all night?" Naruto moaned, turning over. "I will be doing it all night," Kurone confirmed. "I will watch you. I hate this," Naruto sighed as he went to sleep. As Naruto woke up the next morning, he awoke to Kurone looking at him in front of his bed. "You need to stop snoring so loudly when you sleep," she said as Naruto sat up, rubbing his eyes, hoping he was dreaming. "Not this early, seriously," Naruto said as he got out of bed and gathered his clothes. He looked at Kurone, who was staring at him intensely. "Are you going to get dressed?" she asked, looking him up and down. "Not in front of you, I'm not," Naruto said as he went into the bathroom and slammed the door. As he let the shower water run over him, he felt semi-refreshed as he got out and got dressed in his walk-around outfit, a fitted white t-shirt with a small leaf insignia on the front of it. He put on a pair of long blue jeans along with a pair of black slacks with his leaf headband tied around his arm. He walked out the bathroom and gasped as he saw Sakura, Neji, Sai, Gaara, Lee, and Shikamaru waiting inside his room, talking with Kurone. "So you're telling me that Naruto is gay now?" Sai asked as Kurone shook her head yes. "Damn it, Kurone," Naruto screamed as he rushed over. "Naruto, it's good to see you." Sakura gushed as she ran up to Naruto and wrapped him in a hug. Surprised, Naruto hugged back, feeling so happy to see her and everyone else. "Your friend here has been telling us about your new choice of lifestyle," Neji said with a smirk as Naruto looked at Kurone angrily. "I already told you we are just friends." Naruto screamed as Kurone nodded and then shook her head at Sai, who nodded. "So what are you guys doing here?" Naruto asked, stretching a bit as he sat down on his bed next to Sakura and Kurone. "We're on a mission actually," Lee said, sitting on the other side of the bed. "You will never guess what it is. Watch over the bonehead," Shikamaru joked as Naruto looked at them with a happy look. "Do you mean?" Naruto started. "Yup," Sakura interrupted. "You're looking at the new transfer students of Constant Academy. We will all be going here," Gaara said in his usual dark way. "But you are Case Cage Gaara, how will that work?" Naruto asked. "I have people who can take care of that," Gaara replied. "I will be going here for the time being." "This is awesome guys, thank you," Naruto said as he laughed happily. "I will still have to ask you not to watch Naruto," Kurone suddenly spoke up. "That is my job." Sure," Sakura said as everyone laughed. As Naruto showed everyone around the campus, it seemed to be coming along well. That is, until Junko showed up. "Naruto!" Junko shouted as she saw him. Naruto gulped as he slowly turned around as Junko walked up to him, sword in hand. So, where were we last time? Junko asked as she readied her sword. We were going to make up and be friends again? Naruto asked hopefully with a smile. Go to hell, Junko screamed as she went at him. Suddenly, a large shuriken appeared out of nowhere, Naruto spotting it and knocking Junko out the way. Naruto looked at the area at where it was thrown and then looked at Neji, who activated his Byakugan. He's hiding behind that statue and another is in that tree, Neji confirmed as Naruto jumped into action. Naruto began to make hand sign as everyone around him not knowing who he was looked in confusion, as 10 Narutos appeared. The real Naruto pointed at the statue as the man, who was a ninja, appeared and began to throw kunai at the clones. With a quick movement, a Naruto clone was behind the ninja and kicked him in the back, knocking him to the ground. Naruto then decided to focus on the other ninja, who was moving from place to place. The other one is very fast, Neji observed, still watching in his Byakugan. He is grabbing someone right now. What? Naruto shouted as he ran towards the area the man was and seen him holding a kunai to the neck of a red-haired girl. The girl looked at him with tears in her eyes, as a small item dropped from her hair, a small white dove. Naruto looked in anger that the man would go so low. What do you want? Naruto screamed as the ninja sneered at him. I want your head, he screamed as he threw a large shuriken, which hit Naruto dead on. The shuriken hit disappeared in a poof of smoke as a large stump was replaced with him. Suddenly, Naruto jumped from a tree and grabbed the girl from the ninja, who gasped as another Naruto came at him with a round sphere of chakra in his hand and hit him in the chest with it. Rasengan. Naruto screamed as the Rasengan drilled through the man's chest and sent him flying, defeated. The clone Naruto who was carrying the girl walked over as the real Naruto picked up the dove and placed it back in the girl's hair with a smile. The clone Naruto disappeared as the real Naruto carried her over to the others. The girl awoke slowly and seen the heroic blonde hero and instantly fell for him. Who are you? She asked softly as Naruto gently set her down. Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said softly as he looked at her. The girl smiled as he said this. Can I call you Naru-chan? The girl asked. Whatever you want to call me, Naruto said with a grin. What is your name? Kina Soga, the girl said as she passed out again. Junko walked over to Naruto, blushing a bit as she had seen this entire thing. I guess you aren't as bad as you are supposed to be, Junko said, looking away as Naruto smiled at her. Please let us be friends, Junko, Naruto said, looking at her. I really like you. Junko began to blush as Naruto said this and took Kina from Naruto's hands. I'll bring her to the nurse, Junko said as she walked away quickly. As Naruto and Korone returned back to Naruto's dorm room, Naruto had a smile on his face thinking about the day and how everything went. As he walked in his room, Kina suddenly flew through his window and landed on his chest. Hey Naru-chan, Kina greeted as she laid on top of him. Kina, why are you? Naruto began. What's wrong, Naru-chan? Kina asked with a concerned look. Are you nervous cause you are around me? How cute. It's not that. Naruto began as he suddenly heard someone sneeze by his bed. He looked over to see a blushing Hinata looking at him, looking down as she seen the situation he was in. Hinata, you are here now? This isn't what it looks like. Naruto began. He isn't having with this girl, Korone said, shaking her head. Hinata began to blush harder as Naruto put his head back and sighed. I hate this. As Naruto found himself on the floor with Kina on top of him and Hinata standing by his bed looking at him, he had absolutely no idea how to explain this. He opened his mouth to speak again, but just closed his mouth and sighed loudly. Are you okay, Naru-chan? Kina asked as she began to hug him as she laid on top of him. Are you cold? Maybe I should warm up with you. That is so it. Naruto shouted as he pulled Kina off him and stood up and looked at Hinata, scratching his head with a nervous expression on his face. Hinata, it really wasn't how it looked. Naruto began as Hinata began to giggle, Naruto taking a breath of relief and laughing as well. It seems you're having a good time, Naruto, Hinata said as they stopped laughing. I really, missed you. Yeah, I miss everyone, Naruto said as Kina attached herself to his arm, Naruto trying to pull her off, but she had iron grip on his arm. I'm just happy everyone is here now. Naruto, did you tell this girl about your lifestyle? Korone suddenly interrupted as Naruto looked at her, praying she didn't say what she thought she was going to say. I must say I find it not appropriate for you to like men and play along with women who obviously like you, pretending that you are straight. If you do not stop talking I will end you, Korone, Naruto growled as he looked at Hinata, who had turned beet red. Look, let's talk outside, Hinata. Naruto finally got released from Kina's grip as he grabbed Hinata's arm and pulled her out the room. Why is he spending time with her? Kina asked, pouting a bit as she sat on Naruto's bed. He is a very interesting individual, Korone said as she watched Naruto leave the room. As Naruto and Hinata took a stroll on the campus, Naruto was surprised to see Fujiko walking outside by herself, looking up into the sky. Naruto told Hinata he would be right back as he ran over to her, waving and smiling. Fujiko smiled back as he ran up to her, wondering who the girl with him was. Well, look who is popular, Fujiko teased, nodding over at Hinata as Naruto blushed a bit and laughed. It's not like that at all, Naruto explained, looking down with a smile. We are old friends, but never mind that. Why are you walking out so late, Miss Fujiko? Miss Fujiko? Fujiko asked, a small smile on her face. Let's not be so formal, just call me Fujiko. Oh, and I just came out to get some air. What about you? I needed to get out of my dorm, Naruto moaned, thinking about the earlier situation. Korone was getting on my nerves with her conversation choices. The Liladen? Fujiko asked as Naruto looked at her with a confused look. Oh, that's right, you wouldn't know what that is. A Liladen is a race of androids that usually exist to serve one purpose. They can be shut down pretty easily. Usually they have a shut-down switch on their lower back. The handy part is when they wake up, they won't remember getting shut down and will return to function normally afterwards. So you are telling me that annoying green-haired girl is a machine? Naruto shouted, looking at Fujiko with widened eyes. But she acts like. Yeah, they are based on humans, so they get pretty advanced, Fujiko explained. So if she gets on your nerves, shut her down. And it won't hurt her, right? Naruto asked, imagining himself doing this and Korone malfunctioning and turning into a killing machine. She won't lose herself or anything. Nope, Fujiko said with a smile as Naruto sighed with relief. Naruto then looked up and grinned evilly. No more telling people I'm gay, Korone, Naruto said, rubbing his hands with an evil smirk. Telling people what? Fujiko said with a confused look and Naruto looked at her in surprise, forgetting that she was right there and he just said that out loud. Nothing, Naruto shouted as he turned away to go back to Hinata, waving at Fujiko. I'll see you later, Fujiko. Fujiko waved as Naruto walked back over to Hinata and walked out the area. As Fujiko made it back to her dorm, she went into a secret place and changed out of her clothes into a tight-fitting torture outfit. Naruto Uzumaki will be mine, Fujiko said with an evil smirk as she took a seat and began looking into a book of black magic. What are you doing, Fujiko? A man asked, his head in a glass case with his eyes sewed close. None of your concern, brother, Fujiko snapped as she flipped through pages of the book. I need to find a way to speed up the process of Naruto becoming the Demon King. Once he is able to find the Demon King's estate, he should be able to fully become the Demon King, and then I can become his Demon Queen. When did you become so evil, Fujiko? Her brother asked, Fujiko looking at him angrily. You used to be such a good girl. Shut up, fool, Fujiko said, waving her hand at his comment. Maybe I wouldn't be if my brother wasn't a low-down scumbag that abandoned the family. That's right, I am a low-down scumbag, her brother replied, Fujiko beginning to tear up as he said this. That's what you always say. Fujiko screamed as she tossed down the book and walked to the door, looking at the head of her brother in disgust. I am dead, I can only tell the truth, her brother said sadly as Fujiko walked out the room. The next day in school, as Naruto and Hiroshi walked down the hallway to get lunch, Naruto sighed loudly as Hiroshi looked at him with a curious look. What's wrong, big brother? Hiroshi asked, going into the cafeteria and grabbing a sandwich. Is it something I can help with? Well, I would like to do something in the school that would not get me looked at like a monster anymore, Naruto said, watching as Korone followed him into the lunchroom, trying to not be seen. Something where I can help enforce the rules, maybe something to make the school a better place. How about joining the disciplinary committee? Hiroshi said between chewing. That might be the perfect thing for you, big brother. Naruto looked up and smiled as he thought about the idea. That is perfect, Hiroshi. Naruto shouted as he ran out the cafeteria, Kurone in the lunch line, dropping her tray and running to follow him. As Naruto walked to the student council, he began to feel nervous as his hands reached for the doorknob. He took a deep breath as he knocked once and opened the door. He looked to see 4 girls sitting near a desk, one of the girls sitting at the desk with a large pointed witch hat on her head. "Yeah, I can't be in the right place," Naruto said as he began to turn around. "You are looking for the disciplinary committee, right?" the girl at the desk said, Naruto stopping. "Yeah, but what would you girls know about it?" Naruto asked as he turned back around and walked to the desk. "Aren't you charming?" the girl in at the desk said with a smile. "I am Lily Shiraishi, the student council president, and I'm guessing you are Naruto Uzumaki, right?" "You guessed it," Naruto said, taking an empty seat in the front of the desk. "So, I'd like to become part of the disciplinary committee. I will enforce the rules and keep this school safe." "You will, huh?" Lily said, looking Naruto up and down. "I don't know, do you think you can do that well everything you got?" "I do indeed," Naruto said smugly. "You watch me if you give me the job." "Well, I think the students will most likely listen to the Demon Lord before they listen to little old me, don't you?" Lily said in a sing-along voice. "Fine, you got the job. Do as proud Naruto Uzumaki." "Yeah, I'll make sure to keep some order in here," Naruto said with a grin as he walked to the door. "Just make sure to not call me the Demon Lord again, got it?" Lily smirked at him as he walked out the door with a smile. "Naruto!" Sakura screamed as she and Lee ran up to him, Naruto standing with Hiroshi and Kurone. "Hey, what's up guys?" Naruto said with a smile as Sakura ran up to him with a smile. "We were just about to go take a long walk, mind coming with us?" Sakura asked as Hiroshi looked at Sakura, hearts flashing in his eyes. Naruto looked at him as this happened and sighed. "Yeah, just watch out for Loverboy here," Naruto teased as Hiroshi turned bright red. "He's a woman killer, this one. He doesn't seem to have the red-hot passion of one that deserves the title Lady Killer." Rock Lee shouted in his usual overexcited way. One who carries such an awesome title must show that they are truly what their title calls them. "It was a joke, Lee," Sakura sighed as she looked at Naruto with pleading eyes. Naruto nodded and grabbed Hiroshi to come along. "I will be coming along as you observation agent," Kurone said, following Naruto promptly. "I really wish you wouldn't," Naruto muttered as they walked outside. As they traveled on the long road, Naruto was the first to spot a gigantic dog sitting at the top of a large hill, seemingly playing with something. "What the hell is that?" Sakura screamed as Naruto shook his head in annoyance. The dog turned around quickly as Sakura yelled this and began to growl, looking as if it was possessed by something. Naruto pushed everyone back as he gathered chakra in his right hand, preparing for a Rasengan. The dog jumped at them as Naruto finished and then jumped in the air with the dog, hitting the dog in the face as the dog went crashing into a tree, seemingly defeated. Naruto sighed in relief as the dog's eyes opened suddenly, jumping up and pinning Naruto to the ground. As the dog came in contact with Naruto, it began to transform, getting bigger and a red aura beginning to cover its body. "Is this because of the 9 tails?" Naruto thought as he wrestled with the dog, trying to desperately get it off him. Naruto punched it in the face with his left hand, sending the dog to his left, allowing Naruto to get up and prepare himself. He began to make hand signs as Sakura and Lee stepped up to help him. "No!" Naruto shouted as he watched them from the corner of his eye. "Protect them, I will take care of this damn dog." Sakura and Lee nodded as the dog ran at Naruto, its aura getting more vile the more contact with Naruto it made. Naruto grimaced as he used the wind style, air bullets, sending the dog back a bit, but nothing else but that. The dog got back up and began to growl, Naruto looking at it angrily. He looked in surprise as the dog ran at him, trying to attack him as Naruto barely got out the way. He reached over and put his hand on the dog's back, the dog suddenly beginning to glow red. Naruto looked in horror as he felt the dog's power going into him. He looked at the dog and seen that the dog was small and harmless now, wagging its tail and barking at Naruto as Naruto picked it up and patted its head. Hiroshi, Lee, and Sakura looked in amazement as Kurone walked over and used a little machine to scan the dog. "It was infected by something around here," Kurone explained as she looked at the scanner. "You absorbed all the mana that had entered its body when it came in contact with you." "You mean this was my fault?" Naruto asked with his eyes widened. Not exactly, Korone said as she put the scanner back in her bag. The dog was already consumed by something when we came here. All you did was add to the mana in its body when you arrived. How did I do that? Naruto asked with a confused look. When things that are infected with dark mana come in contact with you, you will react with them, Korone said as she looked at Naruto seriously. In other words, when you come near them, they will get stronger. Be careful, or someone you care about will get hurt on your watch. As Naruto walked back to the academy with Sakura, Lee, Korone, and Hiroshi, he couldn't help but hear Korone's words repeating through his head. He looked at Sakura and Lee, two friends that he has known for a while and didn't want them to have to handle something that they have never experienced. As he thought this, he wondered if he should ask them to leave for their own protection. As much as he wanted to keep them there, he didn't want them to have to deal with these beasts, and just because he was forced to be here, they shouldn't have to. He knew that he wanted to be selfish, tell them to stay, tell them he was so glad they were there, but he knew that this was different from the normal ninjas that they usually fought. These were actual monsters, monsters that weren't human or even partially normal. Naruto split away, telling everyone that he felt a little sick, and Korone followed him to his dorm, Naruto laying on his bed, thinking what he should do. "Hey Naru-chan," Kina said as she flew through his window, holding some kind of food cooker. "Can you keep this here for me?" "What the hell is it?" Naruto asked as he sat up and Kina handed him the cooker, Naruto looking at it up and down. "It's a rice cooker," Kina said, as she looked at Naruto with an excited look. "You can make delicious rice with it. Isn't that great?" She began to drool as she thought about all the rice she could make with the cooker. "Can it make ramen?" Naruto asked with a grin as he looked at the rice cooker with an excited look. "No, why would you want to cook ramen for anyway?" Kina asked as Naruto got up and brought the cooker with him. He closed his eyes as he stood in front of the window and tossed out the cooker, Kina gasping as she flew out the window and catches it. "Why did you do that, Naru-chan?" Kina asked with a hurt look as Naruto laid back on his bed and shrugged. "Rice sucks, ramen is a lot better," Naruto replied with a smile as Kina gasped at his words. "Rice does not suck," Kina shouted defensively as Naruto looked away as Korone walked over and took the rice cooker from Kina's hand and looked at it with a skeptical look. "It can make any kind of rice?" Korone asked as Kina shook her head as Naruto groaned and put his pillow over his head. "I don't give a damn about it. Just get it the hell out of here until it can make some damn ramen," Naruto shouted from under his pillow as Kina motioned to Korone, who put the cooker underneath Naruto's bed, Naruto not noticing. She then flew out the window, screaming, "Bye Naruto," as she did. Naruto took the pillow from his face and looked at his hands, wondering if he could ever learn how to control this new power he never knew he had. "Mana," Naruto whispered as he looked at his hands grimly. "Would you like to learn to control it better?" Korone asked as Naruto looked at her with a serious look. "Is there a faster way, any way I could train out of class?" Naruto asked as Korone nodded. "There is an intense training, but it is I think about 24 hours and you are locked in the training area," Korone said as Naruto looked at her with a determined look. "I'll do it tomorrow," Naruto said as he laid back on his pillow and fell asleep, Korone looking at him with an interested look. She went back to her closet, going into contact with headquarters. "We want you to seduce Naruto Uzumaki," a man said as Korone looked at him with a surprised look. "This is a new addition to your current mission, Korone. You will try anything you can to make this occur, understand? Also, you are to make sure those Konoha ninjas do not get in the way of your objective. If possible, get them to leave." "Understood," Korone said as she signed out and opened the closet and looked at Naruto. He was fast asleep, the covers caught up in his feet as he snored loudly. Korone walked over to his bed and quietly slipped in, Naruto not noticing or waking up. The next morning, Naruto woke up in a good mood. Surprised Korone didn't annoy him to wake him up. He yawned as he sat up a bit in the bed, stretching as he didn't even open his eyes. As he did, he laid back down on the pillow and looked at Korone looking back at him, her face so close that their noses were almost touching. Naruto at first didn't know how to react, still quite tired. When this registered in his head, he jumped out his bed, looking at Korone with his eyes widened. "Why the hell are you in my bed?" Naruto asked slowly, his eyes trying to avoid Korone, who had sat up and was sitting in a position that Naruto could see her panties, which made him blush. "Did we do something last night?" Oh man, I feel like Granny Tsunade after she gets out of those casinos she goes to and checks her wallet afterward. What if we did? Korone asked as Naruto turned even redder, almost full red now. If we did that would be very strange, Naruto said as he looked at the floor, Korone getting up and putting her arms over his shoulders, getting her face close to his. I'm going to make you straight tonight, Korone whispered in his ear as Naruto almost fainted. Me and you are going to kick this Sasuke out your head tonight. I'm not gay, Naruto whispered as he didn't know what to do. Pull Korone off him or let her do this to him. She leaned in even closer, her lips almost touching his as all of a sudden, Junko walked into the room through the door, blushing as she seen what was going on. What are you doing, Naruto? Junko shouted as Naruto looked at her with a nervous look. Naruto opened his mouth, but no words came out as he had no idea how to explain this. He watched as Sakura walked up behind Junko, Hinata and Kina with her. Naruto looked at the floor, sweating as he knew he was so dead. Hey, what is? Fujiko said as she passed by the door and looked in, looking at Naruto and Korone almost kissing. Naruto turned even redder, if that was possible, wanted to just run away as fast as he could. What are you doing, Naruto? Sakura growled as Naruto didn't answer, didn't even push back Korone, which would have been the smart thing to do. The next 10 minutes was a tag team beat down by Junko and Sakura, Junko almost stabbing Naruto and Sakura beating the crap out of him. Fujiko, Kina, Hinata, and Korone watched as Sakura and Junko stomped Naruto into the ground, Naruto screaming in pain as he got beat up. A few minutes after, Naruto sat in the nurse's office, one of his eyes blackened and a swollen lip and most likely major internal injuries. Hey, aren't you my teacher and that lady who asked me to sign some papers? Naruto asked as Mitsuko Torii walked in, the school doctor and Naruto's teacher. You just noticed that? Mitsuko asked, Naruto nodding. Oh well, it seems you got quite the injuries, would you perhaps want to sign those papers now? I can turn you into a zombie after you die if you would like. I'm actually quite fine, Naruto said, looking at her with a strange look. I'll survive, but just in case you don't, Mitsuko urged, getting the papers out her desk. Naruto looked at her with his black eye and sighed. Oh right, your injuries, Mitsuko said as she pulled out some bandages and began to sanitize Naruto's eye. Fujiko suddenly walked into the room, Naruto looking at her in surprise. How are you, Naruto? She asked as Kina and Hinata walked in as well. Are you going to be okay? He just has some minor injuries, Mitsuko assured her as Fujiko smiled, touching Naruto's hand which made him jump a bit. Korone told us it was just an accident, Hinata said as she touched Naruto's back, Naruto jumping a bit again. Yeah, but now Sakura and Junko are fighting too, Kina said excitedly as Naruto looked at her in surprise. Why are they fighting? Naruto asked as he jumped from the chair he was sitting on. They both blame each other for hurting you, Fujiko explained as Naruto ran from the nurse's office back to his dorm. Come back to sign those papers, Mitsuko shouted as Naruto ran down the hallway. As Naruto stepped into his room, Sakura and Junko were staring each other down, Junko holding her sword as Sakura held a kunai. Hey, let's calm down now, Naruto shouted as both Junko and Sakura ignored him. They clashed at each other, Junko slamming her sword against Sakura's kunai, sparks flying everywhere. Junko struggled as Sakura was overpowering her with her little kunai, Juno jumping back as she saw Sakura's strength. Sakura smiled as she knew that Junko knew she was stronger, running at her, Junko diving to the side and trying to sweep her at Sakura's knees, Sakura jumping and dodging the attack. Sakura smiled as she realized that Junko was open for an attack, preparing to kick Junko in the face. As she tried, Naruto grabbed her foot midair, standing in front of Junko, looking at the ground as he did. I can't let you hurt her, Sakura, Naruto said as Junko blushed feverishly. She's a friend just like you, and you know I don't let anyone hurt my friends. Naruto, Sakura said softly as she looked at him, seeing that he wasn't the same boy who left the village. Naruto dropped Sakura's foot and turned around and held out his hand, Junko just looking at it, not knowing what to say to the blonde hero. She grabbed it slowly as Naruto picked her up, Naruto looking at her with a smile, Junko looking into his blue eyes, not knowing what he would do. Are you okay, Hattori? Naruto asked as Junko shook her head yes, taking her hand back as Naruto looked at her. Why don't you call me by my first name? Junko asked as Naruto looked at her, closing his eyes and smiling. Because what kind of name is Junko for woman? Naruto asked as Sakura hit him on the top of his head. Junko looked at him angrily as Sakura shook her head. Well, he isn't that different. Sakura sighed as Junko walked out the room and Sakura followed. You sure fight like a gay man, Korone said as Naruto seen her at the door, watching the entire thing. Do you have something against gays or something? Naruto screamed as he looked at Korone. Damn, leave me alone about it. I mean, if I'm gay, so what? Is that a problem for you? Korone looked at him as she moved over and Sai, Hiroshi, Neji, Lee, and Gaara were standing next to her, looking at Naruto with their mouths open. I hate this. Welcome to the newest chapter of Demon King Naruto. As decided by the readers, I will be removing Konoha from the story. So, please enjoy and review. I do not own Naruto or Demon King Daimao. Warning. This chapter is a filler. Next chapter will return to the normal planned story. I just had 2 plans in case, and if Konoha was voted to leave, then I was going to do a filler. It isn't a Konoha filler, it takes place right in Constant Academy and with Naruto. I just wanted to give that warning. As Naruto slept that night, thoughts rushed through his head, thinking about the fight with Junko and Sakura, the incident when they took the walk and ran into the demon dog, and the danger of the campus. As he thought about this, he knew that he couldn't be selfish anymore. He had to tell Sakura and the others to go back to the village. It wasn't that they couldn't handle it, it was that he couldn't handle it himself if something happened to them and he was responsible. So, the next morning, Naruto woke up and gathered his village friends together in his room, ready to tell them the news. I want you guys to leave, Naruto said softly as Sakura, Hinata, Neji, Gaara, Lee, and Sai looked at him with a surprised look. But why Naruto? Sakura asked, looking at Naruto with a puzzled look. If it was about what happened yesterday. No, it wasn't just yesterday, Naruto interrupted, looking down at the floor now. I just don't want you guys to get into any trouble. Why would we get into trouble, Naruto? Neji asked with an annoyed look. We are on a mission. We can't just abandon. Do this for me as my friends. Naruto yelled, interrupting Neji. I just don't want to lose any of you. So please, go home. I will be back to the village sooner than expected. I can't have you guys put your life on hold for me anymore. Go, protect the village I love. And I promise you I will come and visit as soon as I can. Is this really what you want, Naruto? Hinata asked softly as Naruto shook his head solemnly. Everyone looked at each other before suddenly breaking out in laughter. Naruto felt happy to see that his friends took it so well. It's good to see little Naruto grow up so much, Sakura teased as everyone headed for the door. You better come back and visit as soon as you can, you got it? I promise you I will, Naruto said, giving Sakura a thumbs up. Everyone waved as they walked out of Naruto's door, Naruto watching them leave with a tear rolling down his cheek. That went better than expected, Korone suddenly said, stepping out the closet and brushing herself off. Are you crying? Why, does that make me gay? Naruto asked with a knowing smile. No, it makes you a crybaby, I think, Korone replied as Naruto growled and started to get ready for class. After school, Naruto started to prepare for his 24-hour lock-in training, going back to his room and packing up the essentials. You are packing cups of instant ramen? Korone asked as she looked on his bed and seen packs of instant ramen thrown on top of it with an extra pair of clothes. Hell yeah, Naruto answered as he got out a little bag and placed all of the items into it and zipped it up carefully. This is going to be a great training session. I hope it's intense and difficult. No, I heard you have to sit there for 24 hours and meditate, Korone said as Naruto groaned. It helps you relax and learn how to control your mana. If you are able to keep your mind steady and calm, you will be able to do the same with your mana, thus learning more control. Sounds extremely boring, Naruto sighed as he sat back on his bed. Suddenly, Kina flew into his room through Naruto's window, landing on the edge of Naruto's bed and taking a seat. Hey Naru-chan, Kina greeted as Naruto grunted. What y'all up to? I'm going to go be bored for like 24 hours, why? Naruto asked in a bored voice. Is there anything you would like me to do before my sentence? Would you like to eat some rice with me? Kina asked as Naruto shook his head no. Kina pulled out a bowl of rice from nowhere and began to eat it with chopsticks as Naruto thought about himself sitting in a room for 24 hours and his head exploding from boredom. Naruto Uzumaki. A voice screamed from outside as Naruto looked out the window and seen Junko waving at him. He jumped out of his window as everyone watching gasped. Naruto running down the wall and doing a front flip and landing in front of Junko. Everyone looked in horror as he did this, Naruto remembering that he scared the crap out of them. "What's up, Hattori?" Naruto asked as Junko looked at him, blushing a bit at how close he was. Would you like to spar with me?" Junko stuttered as she looked away from Naruto and Naruto looked at her with an excited look. "You want to spar with me?" Naruto asked as Junko nodded. "Why? I heard you were going to train tonight," Junko explained as she remembered Korone telling her yesterday. "So, I was wondering if you want to get a little hand-to-hand training. I barely ever have anyone to train with on this campus. Why not, let's do it," Naruto said as he jumped back to his window and climbed in. He came out a few seconds later wearing his Konoha headband and his ninja tools in a pouch that he tied around his jeans he was wearing with a string. Junko looked at him with a surprised look as she looked at his silver headband, wondering why he would wear such a strange item. Naruto saw her looking at it and grinned, pointing at it with his index finger. "This is my leaf headband from my village," Naruto explained. "Wearing this headband in a battle against a friend means that we are on equals on terms of power and strength and that I understand and respect that." Junko began to blush harder as she unsheathed her sword as a little crowd gathered around them, awaiting to see the battle between Naruto and Junko. Junko made the first move, running at Naruto as Naruto pulled out a kunai knife and stopped Junko's attack as she attacked, Naruto struggling to hold the sword back with his kunai. He pushed her back and jumped back, readying himself for Junko's next attack. Junko began to glow blue as she used her mana, her sword a lot more difficult to dodge. She used a quick slash, Naruto barely dodging as he jumped back from the attack and pulled out a few paper bombs from his pouch and throwing them out in front of Junko, Junko jumping back as they exploded. Naruto grinned as Junko looked at him with pure determination, a smile creeping on her face. Naruto decided to attack this time, running at Junko and attacking her continuously with his kunai quickly, Junko rejecting every attack with her sword. Naruto then pulled out a large scroll and unrolled it, a huge blanket of smoke covering the front of him. As the smoke cleared, everyone gasped as Naruto was holding a large shrunken, a grin on his face. Junko looked at it in surprise as she got into a defensive stance, awaiting to see what Naruto would do next. Naruto grinned as he threw it, Junko smiling as he did, knowing he just messed up. She rolled out the way easily as the shrunken turned into a Naruto and threw a bunch of ninja stars at her, Junko looking at this in surprise and rejecting them with her sword in the nick of time. She then began to sweat as she turned to look at Naruto and felt a kunai knife being held at her neck. Naruto looked at her with a smile as everyone gasped, thinking Naruto was going to hurt Junko. He removed the kunai from her neck and grinned, Junko letting out a sigh from being so surprised. "How did you do that?" Junko asked as Naruto shrugged and looked at Junko with a smile. "I guess I just have a few good techniques," Naruto said with a grin. "That was a great match though. This isn't over, Naruto," Junko said as she sheathed her sword and walked through the crowd, which was beginning to scatter. "You fought her pretty well," a voice said as Naruto turned and seen a green-haired girl looking at him with a smirk. "Who are you?" Naruto asked suspiciously as the girl looked at him with a seductive smile. "Me? Nobody special," the girl said mysteriously. "I just like how you took Junko Hattori down a peg, that's all." "It was a friendly match," Naruto said, already not really liking this girl. "We weren't really fighting. Besides, we are friends. Can we be friends?" the girl asked as Naruto looked at her with a weird look. "I guess we can," Naruto said slowly as the girl smiled and then ran at him. Naruto watched as she jumped on his back, wondering what the hell she was doing. "Hey, what the heck are you doing?" Naruto asked as the girl laughed as he clung onto his back. "My name is Eiko Teruya," the girl whispered in his ear before Naruto felt her get off him and he turned around. "Where did she go?" he asked himself as when he turned around, she was gone. As Naruto walked back up to his room, he was surprised to see Hiroshi waving at him as he ran over. "Big brother," Hiroshi shouted in his usual cheerful way. "What's up, Hiroshi?" Naruto greeted with a smile. "I heard you are going to the mental self-discipline chamber tonight," Hiroshi said as Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I'm getting what I need to get done before I go tonight," Naruto confirmed as he and Hiroshi walked back to his room. Why, so you haven't heard about the self-discipline chamber? Hiroshi asked with widened eyes. No, all I heard is that it is boring as hell, Naruto said in a bored voice as Hiroshi shook his head quickly. People have been said to die there, Hiroshi said in a low voice as Naruto stopped and looked at him with an open mouth. Are you serious? Naruto screamed as he thought about Korone telling him this and he going in there and getting blown up. That bitch, what are you talking about? Hiroshi asked with a curious look as Naruto began to grow more and more furious. Stupid Korone had told me to go there in the first damn place. Naruto shouted as Hiroshi laughed. Wow, she must be trying to kill you, he said with a grin as Naruto looked at him with a completely serious look. I'm gonna get her back for this, Naruto said, thinking of something he could do. But it doesn't matter right now. I got to get ready for that chamber. You are still going to go? Hiroshi shouted as Naruto grinned. You think I'm scared of a damn legend? Naruto asked with a grin. I'm going to go in there and learn how to control my mana. Good luck, big brother, Hiroshi said as Naruto walked the rest of the way to his dorm alone, Hiroshi waving behind him and smiling proudly. This meeting of the disciplinary committee comes to order, Lily announced as Naruto walked into the room, taking a seat next to a girl with brown hair. What's up? Naruto greeted as he leaned back in his seat and everyone looked at him with an annoyed look. You are late, Naruto, Lily said, glancing at the clock on the wall next to her. 10 minutes late to be precise. But you guys just started, Naruto said, pointing out the obvious. So I couldn't be that late. We started late because you weren't here, a girl said in a slight annoyed tone. Next time, show up on time. Whatever, Naruto dismissed it, ready to start the meeting. Lily sighed as she started going over school issues, Naruto only really paying attention if someone said his name. Naruto, Lily shouted as Naruto looked at her with an attentive look. Yes, President? Naruto asked with a mock salute. Hilarious, Lily said as she shook her head. What do you think we could do about all of these goons running around our school and polluting it? Beat the crap out of them, Naruto answered honestly. Such a civil answer, Lily said with a smile. But I'm afraid it isn't that easy. If we do that, we will risk a rebellion from the students, and that wouldn't be a good move on our part. Let me do it then, Naruto said, cracking his knuckles. I will take care of business and besides, they all think of me as a demon anyways. So, what do I have to lose? Maybe you didn't hear the rebellion part of my speech? Lily asked with her eyebrow raised. All you will do is draw attention to yourself. If we are going to do this, it is going to have to be a secret war. What does that mean? Naruto asked as everyone snickered. It means to attack and detain these criminals in secret, one of the members explained. So, we won't be bringing attention to ourselves. Sounds like my kind of plan, Naruto said, getting up from the table and stretching. Good meeting guys, let's do it again real soon. He pushed his chair back and walked out the room, everyone looking at him leave with an annoyed look. Shall we continue the meeting? Lily asked as everyone nodded. As Naruto walked out the room, he was surprised to see Fujiko waiting for him outside the room, smiling as she seen him. How you doing, Naruto? Fujiko asked as Naruto smiled. Pretty good, Fujiko, Naruto said as his smile increased in size. What you doing here? I came here to give you a message from Junko, Fujiko said with a smile. She wants to meet you in the school underground tonight to have a conversation. A conversation? Naruto asked as Fujiko nodded. Somebody told me to tell you that, Fujiko said as she pulled out a small gun, Naruto looking at it and jumping back with his hands up. It's just a love gun, Fujiko said. You hit yourself and then the person you want to have complete understanding with and then you two will be able to honestly talk without any violence. Really? That's great, Fujiko, Naruto said as he snatched the gun away. Knowing Hattori, she is probably pissed with me about something, so this will come in really handy. He ran away, waving at Fujiko as he did, Fujiko waving back at him with an evil smile. As Fujiko returned back to her dorm, she went into her secret room and sat down, a big smile on her face. I can sense that you are happy, Fujiko, her brother said from his jar. What happened? You are right, brother, I'm very happy, Fujiko said as she laid back a bit. Tonight, I'm going to see my plans unfold. I'm going to first have Naruto Uzumaki fall in love with me when he uses that love gun I gave him. Once he shoots himself with it, he will become my eternal slave and love me forever. Also, I'm going to get rid of Junko Hattori tonight as well. I have sent some of my members to the underground part of the school to meet Naruto there when he is talking to Hattori. But unfortunately, when she gets there, she will be convinced that Naruto has challenged her to a battle to the death, which will bring Junko beyond reasoning. Then my men shall kill Junko, after of course Naruto uses the love gun on himself. Then Naruto will defeat them, allowing his true power to unleash. Yes, it sounds perfect. Why would he defeat them for Junko if he loves you? Fujiko's brother asked as Fujiko laughed. That is why you are a fool, brother, Fujiko said with a grin. The love gun doesn't take effect for about an hour, so he will still probably have feelings for Junko at this time. I did this on purpose, just in case. You are truly not the little girl I used to know, Fujiko's brother said sadly as Fujiko snickered. Shut the hell up, Fujiko said as she got up and left the room. Later that night, as Naruto was in his room, ready to go meet Junko before going to the chamber, he looked over at Kurone, who was also carrying a bag with her. Where the hell are you going? Naruto asked with an annoyed look. As your observation agent, I have to go with you wherever you go, Kurone explained as she headed for the door. Naruto began to sweat, thinking about what he could do to get out of this situation. He imagined himself going with Kurone and Kurone doing something to mess the whole thing up and Junko cutting his head off. But then he remembered something that Fujiko had told him that night he was with Hinata. I can shut her down, Naruto whispered as he looked at Kurone with a dark smile. Can you come here for a minute, Kurone? Naruto asked innocently as Kurone looked back at him and walked over to him, Naruto sitting on his bed. Will you stand right there for a minute while I do something? Naruto asked as he began to secretly make hand signs and a Naruto clone appeared behind Kurone, lifting up her skirt slowly. So, how have you been, Kurone? Naruto asked with a nervous smile as Kurone looked at him with an interested look. Just watching you 24 hours a day, she said dryly as the Naruto clone gave the real Naruto a thumbs up as it found a small bunny tail on Kurone. Naruto nodded as the clone Naruto pulled it quickly, Kurone's eyes going dim as she fell on his bed, not moving. Yes, Naruto said as he gave his clone a high five. We are out of here. Naruto's clone disappeared as Naruto grabbed his things for the chamber and the love gun and jumped out his window. As Naruto found his way to the underground part of the school, he was surprised to see Junko already there, her sword in her hand, which was a bad sign. She turned and looked at him angrily, as Naruto looked at her with widened eyes. So you did challenge me? Junko spat as she readied her sword. I thought we were actually friends, I was actually trusting you. I'll kill you. Naruto looked at her with a terrified look, thinking he should probably use the love gun. He pulled it out quickly as Junko knocked it from his hand with her sword. You brought a gun, you coward? Junko asked with disgust. I'll have no mercy on you. Wait, Hattori. Naruto started before he dodged a sword attack. Suddenly, 3 men came out and grabbed Junko from behind, putting her in a choke hold. Stop it now. Naruto screamed as one of the men shot him with a gun in the chest, pushing Naruto back and making him hit the ground, his chest smoking where he got shot. Naruto! Junko screamed as the men began to laugh, Junko losing air as she dropped her sword and fell to her knees. Come on, die little girl, one of the men said as they began to choke Junko even harder. Naruto looked up, feeling helpless at a point. Suddenly, he felt himself begin to change, mana flowing through his body. I told you I would help you, you little whelp, a voice in Naruto's head said. Naruto gasped as his body began to have a dark red aura, his eyes going completely red. He stood up as the men looked at him in horror. Naruto let out a furious scream as his aura grew larger, Naruto smiling at the men evilly. Time to die, Naruto said softly as he instantly appeared in back of the man choking Junko and slammed his fist into the man's back, making the man gasp in pain, letting go of Junko, who fell to the ground. The other men then tried to grab Naruto, but as they did, Naruto grabbed one of the man's arm and snapped it easily, making the man scream in pain as Naruto followed up with an uppercut to the jaw, making the man go up in the air. Then, Naruto quickly made hand signs and cloned Naruto's with the same aura as the original appeared and began to pummel the man in the air as the original Naruto instantly appeared in the air with his amazing speed and slammed his foot into the man's face, blood going everywhere as the man went crashing into the ground, leaving it in dead where he landed. Naruto then appeared in front of the last guy, who was scared out his mind. Naruto grinned evilly as he gathered a Rasengan in his hand and slammed it into the man's chest, making him go crashing into the wall near him. He then looked over at the man who choked Junko, who was getting up. He appeared in front of him quickly as he held a kunai at the man's neck, prepared to cut his throat. He then glanced over at Junko, who had awakened and was looking at him with a terrified look. "Junko," Naruto said as he looked at what he was doing. "Help me." It was a disastrous situation. Naruto had unlocked the mana of the Nine Tails, and due to this had become a monster in his own right. He had cruelly defeated 2 of the 3 men who attacked Junko, and was prepared to kill the last. As he held a kunai knife at the man's throat, an evil smile crept on Naruto's face as he looked at the fear in the man's eyes. The power that Naruto had was staggering, nothing in comparison to just using the Nine Tails chakra. The Nine Tails chakra was great, but its mana was even stronger, giving Naruto what felt like unlimited power. As he prepared to slaughter the man he held in his hand, he glanced over at Junko, who was looking at Naruto with pure fear written all over her face. As Naruto seen this, he began to come back to his senses, looking down at the ground as he realized what he was doing. He dropped the man slowly as he fell to the ground, tears falling from his eyes as he thought about what he had done. Junko stayed on the ground, wanting to comfort Naruto, but didn't know what to do or say. She wanted to hate him for what he just did, but she couldn't. She wanted to say he was a monster, but he had only protected her, which meant something right. These thoughts ran through Junko's head as Naruto got up from the ground and didn't say a word. He walked away from the area, not looking at Junko as he walked past her without uttering a word. He knew he couldn't take back what he just did. He knew what Junko thought of him now, a heartless monster. He thought about what if the villagers and his friends were to see him like that, what would they think? He couldn't bear to answer himself as he walked from the school underground, even more determined to control the demon's mana. "I will not allow you to corrupt me again," Naruto vowed as he walked to the mental discipline chamber by himself. "I will not allow you to make me into a monster like you." "Why are you shouting for?" a voice asked as Naruto turned quickly and sighed as he seen it was just Korone. "What the hell are you doing here?" Naruto asked in a depressed voice as Korone pointed to the mental discipline chamber. "We are supposed to go in there tonight, right?" Korone asked in her usual annoying way as Naruto sighed. "She can wake up that fast?" Naruto muttered to himself as Korone looked at him with a confused look. He sighed again as he waved his hand for Korone to follow him as he headed to the chamber. "Please scan your student ID," a mechanical voice said as Naruto pulled out his ID and flashed it in front of the machine. The machine blinked and scanned his ID as the door slid open. "Here we go," Naruto said as he walked into the room, which was extremely small. "Wow, not much room in this place. Watch out," a voice said as someone who couldn't be seen pushed between Naruto and Korone as the door of the chamber slid shut. "What the hell?" Naruto shouted as Kina came into view, butt naked. "Why aren't you wearing any clothes?" "I can't when I go invisible," Kina whined in a kiddish voice. "I'm sorry Naru-chan, but you seemed so depressed earlier. So I wanted to cheer you up by coming in here with you." "Naruto, this would be the perfect time to prove you are not a gay man to me," Korone said as Naruto turned bright red along with Kina. "Are you serious?" Naruto shouted as he tried to back into a corner. "First of all, I would not have in front of you, Korone. And second of all, why would I do it with Kina?" "Why wouldn't you?" Kina asked with an upset look. "Is there something wrong with me?" "You have a child mentality and a child body," Naruto stated bluntly as Kina looked at him with widened eyes. "Well, remind me to never come cheer you up again," Kina yelled as she turned away, Naruto taking off his jacket and putting it over her. Kina looked back a bit as Naruto did this, blushing slightly. "So what the hell do I have to do in here?" Naruto asked as Korone and Kina shrugged. "You are supposed to meditate or something," Kina answered as Naruto smiled. "That is going to be easy with you two here, huh?" Naruto asked sarcastically as he laid back against a wall, wanting to leave so bad. He looked back and seen a small button sitting next to his face. "What the hell is this?" Naruto wondered as he looked at it with a curious look. He leaned over and pressed it slowly, the wall beginning to slide, making the room begin to expand. "What the hell is going on?" Naruto screamed as Kina and Korone stood up. They looked as there was a hand in the new wall, the hand holding a small rolled-up map. Is that a treasure map? Kina asked with an excited look. Go get it, Naruto. Do I look like a dog? Naruto grumbled as he looked at the hand cautiously. He reached over and grabbed the map quickly, nothing happening. That was easy, Naruto said with a grin as he looked at the hand. I thought for sure something would. As he said this, he was interrupted by the ground shaking violently, the hand going back into the wall as a large man crashed through the wall where the hand was. The man was a complete skeleton, looking back at Naruto as it began to glow red. It's reacting to Naruto's mana, Korone announced as Naruto and Kina looked up at the skeleton with widened eyes. The skeleton smiled as it began to grow flesh, muscle and organs beginning to form on the skeleton. This is so not cool, Naruto moaned as the skeleton became a demon, growling angrily as saliva dripped from its wide mouth, looking at Kina and Naruto hungrily. Damn, this room isn't big enough to do any jutsus. Naruto shouted as he looked back at Korone, who shrugged. Didn't you bring your bag of crap? Nope, Korone answered nonchalantly, Naruto growling angrily as he looked back at the demon, who had began to advance. Let's do it, big guy. Naruto shouted as he ran at the demon slapping him away easily. Naruto growled again as he did hand signs and one clone came to the side of him. The clone began to gather chakra in his left hand as Naruto prepared to run at the monster. The monster decided to not allow this transaction to continue by gathering mana in its mouth and shooting it out at Naruto. Naruto pointed at the clone, who jumped in front of it and took the attack, smoke filling the air. Naruto took advantage by running through the smoke and slamming the half-formed Rasengan into the demon's chest, the demon barely affected by it. The demon snarled angrily as it jumped on Naruto and pinned him down, saliva dripping down onto Naruto's face. Naruto looked at it angrily as he slammed his fist into the demon's jaw, but the demon shook the pain away. He then looked up at Korone and Kina, and wondered why the hell they weren't doing anything. Korone appeared to be on the phone as Kina was in the corner. Damn it to hell, Naruto moaned as he directed his attention back to the monster. The demon was prepared to end the battle, about to bite Naruto's head off as the door to the chamber suddenly opened, Fujiko walking in and shooting the demon in the face with a gun as Naruto closed his eyes. He opened them again as he looked at Fujiko and sighed with relief. Are you okay, Naruto? Fujiko asked with concern as Naruto got up, a little embarrassed. Yeah, I just was playing around with it, Naruto lied as Fujiko nodded her head. Of course you were, I already knew that, Fujiko answered as Naruto smiled. So what are you doing here? He asked as Korone came running over. I called her since you obviously couldn't handle this beast, Korone said as Naruto put his head down and sighed. That was quick thinking on my part. You didn't do anything, Naruto screamed. And how can you give yourself credit? Quite easily actually, Korone answered as Naruto fell to the floor comically. What is that? Kina asked as she pointed towards where the demon was. The demon had a key in its hand, hanging out loosely as it began to turn into bones again. Naruto walked over cautiously and took the key, looking at it with confusion. What in the world? Naruto asked as Fujiko looked at the key with interest. She then looked at Naruto's other hand and seen that he was holding a small map. Can I see that map? Fujiko asked as Naruto nodded and passed her the map. She rolled it open as a small bunny-looking recorder rolled out of it, falling to the ground as Fujiko looked at it with a surprised look. This is what my brother used to use to keep in contact with me when he left, Fujiko said as everyone looked at her in surprise. She pressed the button, which started the recording. Her brother was heard, telling specific instructions that no one understood. What is going on here with this? Kina asked as Naruto and Korone shrugged. Well, let's go on a treasure hunt. A treasure hunt? Naruto asked with an eyebrow raised as Kina nodded excitedly. We can use the map to find the treasure. Kina screamed excitedly as Fujiko looked away. I don't think that is a good idea, she answered as Kina nodded her head yes. Please? She asked in a kiddie voice as Naruto and Fujiko sighed at the same time. Fine, Naruto answered as Kina jumped up and down happily. We do it tomorrow night. I'll bring the stuff then, I want to investigate this, Fujiko said as she walked away, Naruto waving. Naruto is about to go on a new adventure. Prepare for fun in the next chapter of Demon King Naruto. As Fujiko tirelessly went through all of items, she wondered what these specific items had to do with her deceased brother. She looked at the jar that held her brother's head with a frown as she slammed her hand against a wall, wondering what this all meant. "Brother, tell me why you recorded this," Fujiko shouted as her brother's head swayed a bit. "I told you, Fujiko. All I remember is that I used that to leave you messages when I went away on trips," her brother answered, Fujiko looking at him with an angry expression. She closed her eyes with a frustrated look as she turned away from her brother's head and began to think. Damn it, reanimated corpses cannot lie, so he is telling the truth, Fujiko thought as she looked at the items. So what in the world does this have to do with my brother? And why would he go through so much trouble to hide it with such a powerful beast? Unless, Fujiko's eyes snapped open as her mind could only vision the one person she felt somehow had to be connected. Naruto Uzumaki, Fujiko muttered with a small, dark smile as she looked up at the ceiling. She grabbed the items and shoved them in her pocket as she rushed out her room to meet up with Naruto and the others. Meanwhile, Naruto, Kina, and Korone waited impatiently for Fujiko to show up with the map and items at Naruto's dorm room. What the hell is taking her so long? Naruto groaned as he held his stomach and yawned. I want to get some miso ramen in a cup and go to bed. Where is your sense of adventure, Naruto? Kina asked with an excited look. You have to be excited about finding treasure. Hey, I'm ready, Naruto. A voice screamed as Hiroshi ran into the room, falling to the ground as he looked up at Naruto with a bashful look. Always good to see you, Hiroshi, Naruto said with a grin as he got up to help his friend to his feet. So are you ready to go? Yup, I brought everything we need, sunglasses, sunscreen, drinks, food. Kinda went overboard a bit? Korone asked as she looked down at Hiroshi's bag, the bag practically making him fall to the floor from the weight. Are we almost ready yet? Hiroshi whined as he dropped the bag with a loud thud. Where is Ms. Fujiko at? I'm right here, Fujiko announced as she walked into the room. She opened the treasure map and laid it next to Naruto on his bed. I already have a route planned out for us to take that seems the safest way, Fujiko explained as she pointed out the route. If we go this way, it seems we will get to our destination quicker. So are we in agreement? Sounds like a plan, Naruto said, shaking his head in agreement. Now, shall we get going so I can get back here and eat? And leave that damn bag here, Hiroshi. Alright, Hiroshi said with a sigh as he followed Korone, Naruto, Kina, and Fujiko out the door. He looked back quickly as he almost felt someone had been watching them. He turned back and walked out the door as a girl with green hair stuck her head out, her face showing in the window as she watched Naruto and the gang leave with a dark smile. Outside, Junko had been preparing to return to her dorm after a night of sword training by herself. She looked up at Naruto's window as she usually did every night and was shocked to see the girl with green hair slipping away, thinking she was unseen. Eiko Teruya? Junko thought out loud as an angry expression formed on her face. She then looked in surprise as Naruto, Hiroshi, Korone, Kina, and Fujiko stepped out the front door of the dorm headquarters. She quickly hid herself behind a tree as she watched Naruto walk away as Fujiko showed him an old piece of paper. For some reason, this got on Junko's nerves to see Fujiko so close to Naruto, but she tried to push that out her mind. What are you up to? Junko wondered out loud as she began to follow Naruto. Naruto, being a ninja, had picked up the presence of both Junko and Eiko, but decided to leave it be for the time being. As he walked with the girls, they had finally reached a part of the school that was beginning to look completely new to him. Where are we? Naruto asked with an interested look as he looked around this new area with awe. It seems that we are in a secret part of the school's underground labyrinth, Fujiko answered as she looked around with a serious look. We are getting closer to solving this mystery. As she said this, a giant wolf suddenly appeared and dragged her to the ground, trying to rip the map from her hands. As Fujiko struggled, Naruto cracked his knuckles and punched the wolf in the face, sending it flying off of Fujiko instantly. The wolf regained its balance as it looked at Naruto and began to growl loudly, edging closer to Naruto as Naruto looked at it with a smile. Come on, Naruto urged as he looked at the wolf. The wolf sprung forward quickly as Naruto kicked the wolf forward with his left foot and leaned in and slammed the wolf to the ground with a shadow clone. Naruto then began to glow red as he began to concentrate, trying to control the power of the Nine Tails mana. He groaned as he felt his mind begin to drift, meaning he was losing control and was going to become a savage beast like before. He quickly regained himself as he concentrated to seal up the power once more. He succeeded at this, the red aura disappearing as he fell to the ground. Naruto! Kina screamed as Fujiko pulled something out of her pocket as the wolf began to walk towards Naruto. As the wolf tried to take advantage, she threw a potion in its face, the wolf passing out instantly. Naruto snapped out of his momentary collapse, looking up at Fujiko with a smile. "Thank you, Fujiko," Naruto said as he got up and someone jumped on top of his shoulders. "What the hell? Naruto?" a voice said as Naruto looked and seen Eiko Teruya on his back, looking at him with a smile. "Why are you continuously following me?" Naruto asked as Eiko looked at him with a surprised look momentarily. Her look changed instantly as a smile formed on her face and she began to hug onto Naruto a bit, Naruto sighing with annoyance. "I'm here to help you claim your prize," Eiko whispered in Naruto's ear as Naruto looked at her with a confused look. "Don't talk, let's just keep going." Up ahead, Junko had found another entrance and had sneaked inside a small pit filled with hot water with all her clothes off. She sighed with happiness as she leaned back a bit, and then heard noises coming up from ahead. "That's right, I need to keep moving," Junko murmured to herself as she began to swim to that direction, her sword and her clothes tied with a rope to the top of her head. As Naruto, Eiko, Fujiko, Kina, Hiroshi, and Korone finally made it to another area, a pool of hot water stood in front of them, everyone looking at it with a surprised look. Korone pulled out 2 sticks out of her bag and put them into the water, pulling them out and nodding to everyone. "It's able to be swam in," Korone confirmed as Naruto pulled Eiko off him and started to strip down to his boxers, Fujiko blushing a bit and turning away, Kina completely turning away but sneaking a look, and Eiko just watching him with an amused look. Naruto then jumped into the water as he looked around for any clues, looking around quickly. Suddenly, someone jumped onto his shoulders, Naruto almost falling into the water and drowning. He turned and seen a naked Eiko smiling at him as she was on his shoulders again. "Why do you have to do that?" Naruto moaned as he heard a noise coming from the water. He prepared himself quickly as Junko quickly jumped up from the water, her sword out as she looked at Eiko. "I knew you were up to something, Eiko Teruya," Junko roared as she prepared her sword, completely naked. Naruto stared intensely as Junko looked down and remembered she was naked and covered herself with her hands quickly. "Junko Hattori, always meddling with things," Eiko replied with a smile as she pulled a smaller sword from a hairpin in her hair. Junko rushed at her as they began to clash in the water butt naked, Naruto not able to stop himself from grinning. As Eiko tried to take a swing at Junko's neck, Junko quickly dodged and brought her sword down upon Eiko's, the 2 swordswomen looking at each other with angry looks. The swords broke apart as Junko pulled her sword back and tried to attack Eiko once again, Eiko countering Junko's sword and trying to get a shot at Junko's exposed stomach. Junko jumped back in the nick of time as Eiko swung and missed, Junko taking advantage and lashing her foot out in Eiko's face, knocking Eiko back into the water. As Naruto watched all of this, he fell back as he seen, well you know. Kitty cat. LMAO, as Junko realized Naruto saw this, she turned a dark red and screamed. Eiko grinned as she prepared her sword to attack Junko, but as she swung, Naruto appeared before Junko in a blanket of smoke and caught the blade, looking at Eiko with a dark look. "This battle ends here," Naruto said as Eiko looked at him with widened eyes. "So you choose her," Eiko muttered as she looked at Naruto with an angry look. "Fine, I don't care anyways. I would have been a lot better. I don't know what you are talking about, but I would always choose Hattori over you because I don't like you at all," Naruto exclaimed as Junko turned even redder. "Fine," Eiko screamed as she opened her hand and handed Naruto the key that Fujiko was supposed to have. "You stole it?" Naruto asked as Eiko didn't answer. She just pointed to a boulder over on the ground and walked away, not looking back. "Naruto, come on," Fujiko screamed as she motioned for Naruto to come over with an impatient look. "Let's go," Naruto said as he looked back at Junko with a smile. "The Demon Lord has returned. Welcome to the newest chapter of Demon King Naruto. I do not own Naruto or Demon King Daimao. R&R." As Naruto, Junko, Fujiko, Kina, Hiroshi, and Korone walked through the cave, the words that Eiko Teruya said to Naruto echoed in Junko's head. What was she talking about? Naruto chose me. Junko wondered to herself as she looked at Naruto, who was walking and talking with Hiroshi, not a care in the world. As they reached the boulder that Eiko was speaking of, Fujiko walked up to it and placed her hand on the boulder, looking at it with an intense look. "It's time," she muttered as she looked up at Naruto, who nodded and brought over the items. She placed the key inside the boulder, which opened up a portal. Everyone looked at each other with worried looks before stepping onto the portal. Minutes later, they were all standing next to each other, a large door in front of them. "Is this where the treasure is?" Kina asked as everyone remained silent. Korone walked up to the wall and looked at it with interest, using a small machine to scan the door. "There is something behind this door with an extreme amount of mana," Korone announced. "We will most likely be attacked by it when we open this door." "Whatever, let's just get this over with," Naruto grumbled as he walked up to the door. "Hold on a minute there," a voice screamed behind them as Naruto turned and was surprised to see Lily Shiraishi behind him, along with the rest of the student council. "You don't need to pass to there, the test is over," Lily announced as everyone looked at Naruto with surprise. "We were the ones who put the map in the chamber and we are the ones who set up the traps here. And you passed. So Naruto, what prize would you like? Maybe a kiss from me?" Naruto started before Fujiko snatched the items from his hand and ran to the door. She used the recorder at the door and a small keyhole appeared. "Damn it, no!" Lily screamed as Fujiko entered the key. The door slid open slowly as Fujiko went running into the room. She went into the room and a loud scream was heard as the room filled with a bright light. "Fujiko!" Naruto screamed as he looked at the door with shock. As Lily went running to the door, Naruto jumped in front of her quickly with a stern look. "What the hell is going on here?" Naruto asked as Lily balled up her fists. Her fist began to glow blue with mana as she swung at Naruto, Naruto catching her fist in midair. "Don't bother with foolishness like that," Naruto said as he looked at Lily. "Now what is going on?" As he said this, Lily used her other hand to gather mana and shoved into Naruto's chest in a ball form. Naruto got pushed back by the attack as he got up and immediately got pissed off. He walked up to Lily with an annoyed look as a blue aura began to surface around her, Lily looking at him with a determined look. She ran up at him and began to swing at him quickly, Naruto barely able to dodge as he tried to counter. As she swung, Naruto ducked and tripped her, and as he did he grabbed her leg and slammed her to the ground on the other side of him. Kina gasped as everyone else watched with solemn expressions. Lily looked as if she was passed out for a moment, before snapping her eyes open. She stood up and dusted herself off as Naruto looked at her apologetically. "Look, I didn't mean to." Naruto started as Lily slammed her fist into Naruto's chest, Naruto coughing up blood as she then put both her hands in front of his body and sent a huge ball of mana at Naruto, sending him flying back from the power of the attack. Naruto stumbled to the ground, not able to regain his footing at first. He looked up at Lily as he stood back up, looking at Lily with a smile. "Shadow Clone Jutsu!" Naruto screamed as hundreds of Narutos attacked Lily and her council, Naruto turning and running into the room that Fujiko had entered. "Wait, Naruto!" Lily screamed as she pushed through all the clones. "If you go into that room, you are sealing your fate for eternity that you will become the Demon Lord." Naruto turned and looked at her with a heroic smile. "I'll do what I have to do to save Fujiko," Naruto stated as he turned and walked into the room. As he walked in, the first thing he saw was that Fujiko was unconscious and that a giant dragon loomed over her, looking at Naruto with a fierce look as he walked into the room. "What have you done to Fujiko, asshole?" Naruto spat as he began to glow a faint red aura. "She was not my master, only my master can enter this room," the dragon replied as Naruto looked at it in surprise, not expecting it to actually answer. "I will now administer the same test I gave to her to you to see if you are my master." Naruto looked in surprise as the dragon began to gather mana inside its mouth and shot it at Naruto with lightning speed. Naruto rolled away quickly as he ran up to the dragon and tried to attack, but the dragon flew high into the air. The dragon went crashing at Naruto as Naruto used his chakra to run up a wall next to him, narrowly avoiding the attack. The dragon turned quickly and began to shoot continuous balls of mana at Naruto, Naruto dodging them as he tried to race against the dragon. Naruto looked up at the dragon with red eyes as Naruto's body began to transform. His body became shrouded in a dark red aura as his eyes became red with a small slit in the middle of them where the pupils were. His nails became pointed as his teeth became sharp and deadly looking. His hair stood up a bit as the aura surrounded his body, the power coursing throughout it. Naruto felt his mind begin to drift away as primal instincts prepared to take over once again. Inside his mind, he looked at the Nine Tails face to face, the Nine Tails chuckling as it looked at Naruto. "Puny fool, you cannot withstand all of this power and expect to be able to keep your mind in the process," the Nine Tails growled as it looked at Naruto. "You will be consumed and you will kill all of these fools that surround you on a daily basis." "You mean my friends?" Naruto asked as he opened his eyes with a smile crossing his face. "I don't think so, Kyuubi. I will never allow this to occur." Naruto let out a scream as the dragon looked at him with surprise, not expecting this much power. "You're finished," Naruto stated as he instantly disappeared and slammed his fist into the dragon's face and sent it flying into a wall, laying it out completely. "You were completely out of line," Naruto said as he looked at the dragon. "I'm sorry, Master," the dragon said sheepishly. "But I had to know if you were my master." "I'm not your master," Naruto replied. "What are you anyway?" "Peter Hausen," the dragon replied. "That is the gayest name I ever heard for a dragon," Naruto replied with a grin. "Maybe so, but how many dragons gave you their name?" Peter Hausen asked as Naruto nodded in agreement. "Anyways, my former master gave me the name. You as my new master can name me whatever you want to." "You aren't a good listener, are you?" Naruto asked as Peter Hausen shrugged. "Fine, I'm your master then. But you will do whatever the hell I tell you to then." "Of course," Peter Hausen answered. "Never attack my friends again, or I will end you," Naruto said with a dark look as Peter Hausen nodded. "Yes, master," he answered as Naruto smiled. "This is going to be awesome," Naruto said as he looked at Peter Hausen. "My own dragon. Naruto, time to get up," a voice said sweetly as Naruto awoke with a smile. He yawned loudly as he opened his eyes slowly. As he did, he realized that Korone was laying on top of him, looking at him face to face as his eyes fully opened. "What the hell?" Naruto shouted as he sat up, Korone dressed in a skimpy bedtime outfit. "What the hell are you wearing and why are you on top of me?" Korone didn't answer, just positioning herself on top of Naruto again, Naruto groaning as he pushed her off himself. "Why are you always trying to get in bed with me?" Naruto asked as Korone shrugged, trying to push herself on top of Naruto with sheer force as he pushed her back with both hands. "Do you not like me, Naruto Uzumaki?" Korone asked as Naruto looked at her with a questionable look. "In what way do you mean that?" Naruto asked as Korone looked at him with a obviously fake wry smile. "I think you know already," Korone answered as Naruto looked at her, not knowing what to say to this. I think of us as good friends, yeah," Naruto replied with a nervous smile. Korone didn't say anything, looking down at the floor, disappointed. "Well, I'm going to go jump in the shower, see ya," Naruto shouted as he jumped up from the bed and grabbed some clothes from his dresser. As he jumped in the shower and let the hot water run over himself, the events that had occurred the day before replayed in his mind. "This is your dragon?" Kina asked for the third time as Naruto nodded with a grin, patting Peter Hausen on the back. "So I guess you accept your fate as the Demon Lord then," Lily said as Naruto snickered. "I already told someone else that I wasn't becoming the Demon Lord and I meant it," Naruto replied with a serious look. "I have no interest in that at all. All I want to do is become the Hokage of my village and eat every kind of ramen in the world." "Such an innocent dream," Lily answered with a thoughtful smile. "I just hope that you are willing to truly accept your fate, it has already come into play." "Naruto!" Fujiko screamed as she awoke. She looked up as Naruto looked down at her with a warm smile. "So you are." Naruto started before Fujiko wrapped him in a hug, Naruto turning red. "So you were able to make the dragon your own?" Fujiko shouted as she hugged Naruto tighter. "I will be your demon queen." "Wait, my what?" Naruto asked with a confused look as Fujiko celebrated and jumped up and down. "It seems you will have your hands full, Naruto Uzumaki," Lily said as she smiled at Naruto. "Now, about the award that I owe you." As Fujiko let go of Naruto, Lily walked up to him and kissed him on the lips, Naruto watching this with widened eyes and turning even redder. "Something tells me this will be my most interesting master," Peter Hausen said as he looked at this with amusement. As Naruto turned off the shower water, he looked at his outfit he chose, his signature orange and black outfit with his leaf headband laying on top of it. He looked at it fondly, not having wore it in so long. As he looked at it, an idea crossed his mind. He quickly got dressed, pulling on a white t-shirt as he threw on his orange and black jacket and tied his headband to his head. He pulled on his shoes as he pulled open the bathroom door and grinned at Korone, who was looking at him with a surprised look. "I'm going to go visit my village," Naruto shouted with excitement. "Since today is Friday and we have a day off due to a conference, I have the whole weekend to be with my friends and go to Ichiraku's with Master Iruka. I might even be able to go on a mission." "That sounds like a great idea, Naruto," a voice said as Kina flew through Naruto's window. "We all will come with you." "Wait, what?" Naruto yelled as there was a knock on his door and Fujiko and Hiroshi entered the room. "Hey, I was coming to check on my king," Fujiko said as she sat on Naruto's bed and flashed him a wry smile. "We're all going to Naruto's hometown with him," Kina shouted as Fujiko and Hiroshi nodded. "No, this wasn't," Naruto shouted as Junko jumped in his window. "So you are going to this village, huh?" Junko asked with a smile. "I shall be going as well, to see if it actually even exists." "Oh man," Naruto muttered as he knew he couldn't win. "I guess you guys can come with me then. I shall also be going as your observation agent," Korone reminded Naruto as he sighed. "I already know this, Korone," Naruto replied with a miserable look. "Let's get going then." After a long train ride over to the village, Naruto and his friends stepped from the train with a smile as Naruto took a deep breath and looked up into the blue sky. "Home sweet home," Naruto murmured as he looked around, as they began to walk to the entrance to the village. "So why is this place like hidden?" Kina asked as Naruto turned around and pointed to his headband. "I'm a ninja, Kina, so we can't just have a sign that says welcome to our village," Naruto replied. "We have to stay in the shadows at all times." "Okay," Kina replied as Hiroshi giggled. Naruto looked back at them with annoyance as he walked up to the gate. "So you are Naruto Uzumaki," a voice said as Naruto turned around quickly. A man stood behind Naruto and the gang, looking up at Naruto with a cold stare. "Who are you?" Naruto asked as he looked at the man tall and lanky with stringy black hair and strange blood-red eyes. He was wearing a sand headband, but didn't look like someone that was in the sand village. "My name is Koseru Mishitage," the man replied with a strange grin. "I am an expert in the field of mana and chakra flow and abilities. I would love to be able to maybe meet with you and your lovely friends here and talk about this amazing mana you all possess." "Maybe later," Naruto replied with a dark look as he began to observe the area. "We just need to get back to the village." As he said this, he was interrupted by three masked men jumping down and grabbing Junko, Fujiko, and Kina. Naruto quickly jumped into action as he reached for his ninja tools, but remembered that he had forgotten them back at his dorm. "Damn it," Naruto screamed. "Let's go with this then." Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto began to make hand signs as Koseru pulled out a small machine from his pocket and shoved it in Naruto's back, Naruto looking back with widened eyes before falling to the ground. "What did you do to him?" Hiroshi asked angrily as Korone held him back. "I took away enough chakra and mana to pass him out for the time being," Koseru replied with a wicked grin. "You see, I am actually a scientist that does experiments with beings that have vast amounts of mana and chakra. Mana is a slightly new form of power I found after I was exiled from the Sand Village for my experimenting. I found myself in a strange new world with new technology all around me. Using this technology, I created many machines that could help me wipe every great nation off the map easily. Especially if they can't use any chakra on me. After finding this out, I recruited some help and even got myself a cushy job working alongside Orochimaru. Basically I do as I please and report any finding back to the man himself. In return, he gives me protection and safety. You two do not have anything worth meaning to me, so be gone before you meet your demise. It will do you no good to tell the village, by the time you do, it will be far too late. So, until next time, farewell." Koseru's body flickered away along with his men, carrying Naruto, Kina, Junko, and Fujiko away with them. "Why didn't you do anything to stop them, Korone?" Hiroshi asked as Korone looked at the area where the men once stood. "I did not have the sufficient power to defeat enemies of that level," Korone replied as she turned and looked at the village. "We must not waste any time. We will go into this village that Naruto Uzumaki calls home and receive help. As Korone and Hiroshi walked into the Hidden Leaf village, words could not describe how amazed they were. Look at this place, Hiroshi exclaimed as he walked around the village, looking at all of the people and shops. It's like a giant mall or something. We do not have the time to browse, Korone replied as she looked around the area. We need to find the person in charge. She stopped as she seen a man wearing a leaf headband covering one of his eyes and crisp white hair walk into the village, reading a book as he walked. Excuse me sir, do you know where the leader of this place lives? Hiroshi asked as the man looked up from his book and analyzed the two people standing in front of him. Both of them seemed to be teenagers, both wearing what seemed like a school-like outfit. One had bright green hair as the other one had more blondish hair and seemed to be quite scared. The green-haired girl seemed to not be able to show the slightest bit of emotion, almost robot-like. So who are you two? The man asked as Korone and Hiroshi looked at each other in unison. There is no time to be making acquaintances, Korone replied as she looked at the man impatiently. I need you to inform you leader that the boy that I am supposed to be observing, Naruto Uzumaki, has been captured along with 3 other students by what seemed like rogue warriors. Wait, what? The man asked as he put away his book. Follow me. Korone and Hiroshi did as he commanded as he brought them to a giant building that seemed as if it was belonging to someone important. The man brought them in and they stood before a woman that sat at a desk labeled Hokage. Kakashi, you are back early from your mission, the woman said as Kakashi nodded. Who are these people? These are people I found that informed me that Naruto has been captured by rogue ninjas along with 3 others from the school we sent him to. Kakashi replied as the woman looked at him with widened eyes. Why would he have been around the village? The woman asked loudly. And why would he bring these people with him? I have no idea Lady Tsunade, Kakashi answered as he scratched the back of his head. What were these people that you ran into wearing? Tsunade asked, directing her attention to Korone and Hiroshi. Were they wearing a headband like Kakashi's? No, they had mentioned that they were from somewhere called the Sand Village, Korone recalled as Tsunade gasped. I will have to talk to Gaara then, Tsunade said as she looked up at the ceiling. Alright Kakashi, I need you to gather up a team of 2 with you and bring these 2 along. The mission is to retrieve Naruto and the others that he is with. Go. Kakashi nodded as he guided Korone and Hiroshi out of the office and sighed. Naruto you idiot, Kakashi said aloud as he walked outside. Don't do anything rash. As Naruto awoke, he looked around slowly as his vision cleared up. Where am I? Naruto wondered as he looked down and seen that he was chained up against a wall, Junko, Kina, and Fujiko chained up beside him. Damn it, that's right, we got captured by that goon. Naruto tugged at the chains a bit as he tried to think of a way to escape. Well, it seems that one of the test subjects have awakened, a voice announced as Naruto looked around cautiously. Don't try to use any jutsu, your chakra has been drained so that you only have enough to survive. You will be, unfortunately, my guests for a very long time. Thanks to the data that I will be getting from you, I will be ready to exact my revenge on the Sand Village a lot sooner than expected. Let me down from here now, Naruto warned as he looked around. I will not have any mercy on you once I escape. But you won't be escaping. The voice shouted. You will stay where you are, so I have nothing to worry about. You will pay for attacking my friends. Naruto shouted as he looked down, too weak to do anything. I won't give in. Naruto. A voice said as Naruto turned and seen Kina looking at him with a weak smile. Are you okay, Kina? Naruto said as he looked at her with widened eyes. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better than this. You are not going to give up, are you? Kina asked. The Naruto I know wouldn't give up when the chips are down. He would do anything to protect his friends. As she said this, she fainted from exhaustion. Kina. Naruto roared as the Kyuubi's chakra began to course through his body. That's it. Naruto's eyes went into the eyes of the Kyuubi as he was covered in a red aura, looking around as he tore away the chains with sheer force. Yes, that's it Naruto, a voice cooed as Naruto looked around angrily. Show me that magnificent power of yours? As Kakashi left the village, Korone and Hiroshi were accompanied by Sakura and Neji, who were helping to find Naruto. So Naruto was coming home to visit and he was jumped by these ninja? Sakura asked as Hiroshi nodded. You guys did a good job coming to get us. These guys might get dangerous, so make sure to not get in the way, okay? I possess the ability to battle, Korone replied as she looked at Hiroshi. I'm not sure about him though. Hey, Hiroshi protested as he looked straight ahead. Here we come Naruto, Sakura said as she walked alongside her teammates. Where are you? Naruto roared as the aura around his body began to increase in size. Tell me where you are, you bastard. Your power seems to be based on your emotions. A voice analyzed as Naruto slammed his fist into a wall next to him. Shut the hell up. Naruto screamed as his aura began to bubble, the mana power beginning to surface. It seems that now that you have come in contact with man, you are able to summon the strength of it in battle. The voice continued as Naruto's appearance began to change, his body completely covered by the red aura now. His teeth began to sharpen, the whiskers on his face turning a dark black. His hair began to stand up slightly, his nails increasing in size until they looked like claws. So this is your full potential? The voice asked as Naruto looked around with a bloodthirsty grin. I expected so much more from the Jinchuruki of the Kyuubi. Naruto continued to grin eerily as he pointing his hand at the wall next to him, opening it wide. As he did, the wall exploded, a huge hole appearing in the wall. The voice gasped as Naruto climbed through the hole, a huge warehouse in the room. People in black uniforms looked over at the hole in surprise, all grabbing some sort of gun from a wall as they ran over to Naruto and stood in front of him, guns drawn. Naruto grinned viciously as they began to shoot in the guns, Naruto running from the gun blasts easily, dodging with amazing speed as he ran. A man stepped out from a computer and grinned at Naruto as his gun began to glow. Naruto returned the grin as he simply reached over and touched the gun exploding in the man's face instantly. Naruto then grabbed the man by the collar and began to viciously attack him, cruelly hitting him with no mercy as Naruto tossed his to the ground and sent a ball of pure mana at the man's body, a huge explosion taking place as he did. Naruto turned around quickly as a man tried to hit him in the face with his gun, Naruto catching the gun in midair. He grinned as he clawed the man in the face, blood dripping down the man's face as Naruto then pushed him back with sheer force of power. The other men looked at Naruto with surprise as Naruto gathered another ball of mana in his hand and shot it at them, the men diving away as the shot hit the ground, the impact devastating the area. Naruto began to chuckle darkly as he looked over and spotted the man who had captured him, clapping slightly as he looked at Naruto with a smirk. So we meet again Naruto Uzumaki, Koseru announced as he looked at Naruto with a grin. I see you have found your way into our lab. Well, allow me to give you the grand tour. You got a lot of nerve, you son of a bitch, Naruto interrupted, giving Koseru an angry stare. You kidnap my friends and then come over here and talk to me so nonchalantly? You must be in a hurry to die. Such a foul-mouthed beast, Koseru remarked, looking at Naruto with a silly grin. I have no interest of your plans of escape. You are completely disposable, along with your pathetic little girlfriends. As Koseru said this, the three men that were with him earlier dragged Junko, Fujiko, and Kina out in a chokehold, holding kunai to each of their necks. As you can see, I will kill them all right now, Koseru continued as he brushed his hair back from his eyes. I have no interest in specimen that try to escape. There are a lot more Jinchuruki than just you, and I know there are more girls with high-level mana as well. So, are you going to be a good fox boy or do I have to teach you a lesson? I have no interest in what you do to them, Naruto replied as Koseru looked at him with widened eyes. I already know that you are bluffing, so I'm not too worried. Besides, you wouldn't dare try to step anywhere away from this place, knowing that Orochimaru is watching every step that you take. And I'm positive he won't allow a field trip that would potentially get you out of his sights. And allow me to tell you a little something, friend. If you kill those girls, I promise you that you will become my new test subject when I test my new strength upon you. In other words, I'm going to make you my bitch. So make your decision, worm. That isn't Naruto Uzumaki talking, Koseru replied with widened eyes. He wouldn't be so brutal. I have read his files, I know that. You read my files? Naruto mimicked, looking at Koseru with a grin. Well, maybe you should revise them at this point, you think? Because I'm not the Naruto that you know. Fine, you are a defective specimen, Koseru replied as he motioned for his men to drop the women. We will dispose of you first, it would be too risky to kill the women. So you decide to come fight me and die? Naruto asked as he cracked his knuckles, his aura rising even more. I have plenty of mana and newfound strength to show you then. Prepare your chakra guns. Koseru screamed as the three men pulled out the weapon that they had used to drain Naruto of his chakra and mana earlier. We will drain all of his chakra so that he dies. So that is your plan then, Naruto said as he prepared for the fight. It sounds pathetic, but I'll play along for the time being. Let's go wild, shall we? Meanwhile, Kakashi, Korone, Hiroshi, Sakura, and Neji had traveled to the Sand Village, meeting up with Temari and Gaara at the gate of the village. What took you so long? Gaara asked as Kakashi pointed back at Hiroshi. He's kind of really slow and talkative, Kakashi replied as Hiroshi looked away. Anyway, we need all the information about any scientists that have left the village. We did as much research as we could find, Temari said as she handed Kakashi a file. This is the person that seemed most likely to commit a crime this heinous. His name is Koseru Mishitage, a sand ninja that was exiled from the village after it was found out that he was one of the people who was helping Orochimaru experiment with the curse marks. He was originally supposed to be imprisoned, but he managed to escape and stay under the radar for all of this time. His most notable experiment was the discovery of another energy type other than chakra that is called mana. He also discovered that most ninjas would not be able to access it, having so much control over chakra. He found out that only ninjas with special abilities would be able to control both. I'm guessing Naruto fits into this category. This guy is good then, Sakura said as Temari nodded. We need to find Naruto immediately. Yes, before this gets out of hand. Neji agreed as they stood there, the wind blowing gently. So who wants it first? Naruto asked as he was crowded by the men carrying the chakra guns. 3 against little old me? Seems so unfair. For you. As Naruto said this, he slammed his fist into one of the men's face, the man's nose tilting as blood gushed out. Naruto then kneed the man in the chest and followed up with a quick lash kick, kicking the man directly in the face. The other 2 men watched this with surprise, as Naruto got on all fours and started to run at the wildly. The men snapped out of it as they lifted their guns and aimed at Naruto grinning broadly as they did. They began to shoot the guns, Naruto dodging them with amazing speed as he leapt into the air and landed on top of one of the men, punching him in the face with quick punches, the man dropping the gun and trying to defend his face. Naruto then put his hands to the man's chest as his hands began to glow a dark red. He then covered the man in a red glow, shooting 2 balls of mana directly at the man's chest when he put his hands on it. The other man covered himself as he was drenched in the light, Naruto jumping from the man on the ground to the man protecting himself. The man seen Naruto coming at him and slammed the butt of his gun in Naruto's jaw, Naruto getting pushed back by this. The man grinned as he turned his gun back around into its proper position and walked through the smoke, chuckling softly. What the hell is so funny? Naruto whispered in the man's ear as the man looked around his shoulder with a fearful look. He looked at where Naruto was supposed to be and seen a metal bar that seemed a bit bent from something hitting it. Damn it, the man muttered as he was given a wicked uppercut by Naruto, the uppercut knocking the man in the air as Naruto made hand signs. He used the shadow clone jutsu and began to pummel the man in the air with his clone, and as the man fell he finished it off with a mana-infused Rasengan to the man's chest as he fell to the ground. Alright, that was a little too easy, Naruto muttered as he wiped his hands on his pants. I'm barely warmed up here, Koseru. I hope that you can do better. Naruto stopped as he looked around and realized that Koseru had disappeared. The son of a bitch escaped, Naruto moaned as he looked around frantically. This guy is really getting on my nerves here. Naruto, a voice said as Naruto turned around and seen Junko, Kina, and Fujiko looking at him. Fujiko the only one looking at him like she was starstruck. Junko and Kina were looking at him like he was evil, a horrified expression on each of their faces. So you guys are finally awake, huh? Naruto asked as Fujiko came running up to him, hearts in her eyes. Are you okay? Naruto, what's wrong with you? Junko asked as she slapped him, Naruto's hand going to where she slapped him. Why were you acting like that? Maybe everyone is right, you are the Demon King. I am not a Demon King. Naruto bellowed as his aura grew wider, Naruto seeing this and looking at Junko and Kina with a sheepish grin. Look, I'm not a demon, it's just this power. You have gone drunk with power, baby. Fujiko said as she hugged Naruto tightly. Make me your demon queen. I'm not, Naruto began to say as he heard something behind him. He pushed Fujiko back as he turned and caught Kosaru's hand in midair as he tried to attack him with what seemed like a dagger. Caught you, rat, Naruto said with a grin as Koseru grinned back. Actually, I have you, Koseru shouted as Naruto was stabbed in the chest with a needle, the needle making Naruto pass out when it went inside him. Naruto, Junko shouted as Kina held onto her arm. That is more than enough, ladies, Koseru said as he pulled the needle out of Naruto and let him drop to the ground. I now have the blood that I need to complete my test. What test is that? Kina asked as Koseru ripped off his lab coat and injected himself with the needle, Naruto's blood going into his veins. He then reached in his pants pocket and pulled out another needle, injecting himself with that as well. I shall now have enough power to even kill Orochimaru. Koseru bellowed as his body began to transform, his body gaining tremendous muscle mass as his veins began to pulse. He began to grow in size, a red aura beginning to cover his body as Koseru began to chuckle, his chuckle growing deeper and deeper the stronger and bigger he got. Is this guy on steroids? Fujiko asked nervously as she watched Koseru loom over her, a mark appearing over his forehead. I now have the ability to control mana and chakra, the ultimate power. Koseru bellowed as he finally stopped growing. I can now show you the power of my research. This is the kind of power that can be obtained by using mana and chakra to their fullest. With this power, I can destroy the sand village, I can. How about shut the hell up? Naruto murmured as he pulled himself up from the ground. I don't know what you did to me there, but I'm not going to have any mercy on you for it. I stole all of your mana and chakra you were just displaying and placed it inside my own body. Koseru replied as he went into a muscular pose. What do you think of my new strength? I think I'm going to have fun kicking the crap out of you. Naruto replied weakly as he put a hand to his chest. Damn it, you don't have enough chakra to even stand barely. Koseru shouted as he punched Naruto in the chest, Naruto gasping as he was sent flying into a wall. Koseru then rushed at him, beating him deeper into the wall as he continued to punch and punch. Stop it, Junko shouted as she picked up a pole and smashed it against Kosaru's head. Koseru laughed as he slapped Junko away with his free hand and began to choke Naruto against the wall. You seem so much weaker than you just were, fox boy, Koseru said as he tightened his grip on Naruto's neck. You are just a coward after all, huh? Shut up, Naruto screamed as he closed his eyes and reopened him, his eyes glowing red as he did. He wrenched his arm free and slammed it into Kosaru's face, Koseru getting pushed back slightly by it. Naruto fell to the ground as he rubbed his neck and looked up at Koseru, who was wiping blood from his chin. So you finally got a little more fight in you, huh? Koseru asked as he cracked his knuckles. I'm going to have to pull that out of you as well. As he said this, a wall collapsed next to him as Korone stood by it, her cannon smoking slightly as she put it to the side of her, Hiroshi, Kakashi, Sakura, and Neji running into the room. Naruto. Hiroshi screamed as Naruto gave him the peace sign, smiling with one eye closed. I thought that Naruto's chakra seemed disoriented, Neji said as he analyzed Kosaru's body with his Byakugan. This man has infused himself with Naruto's chakra and some other energy source. So he's the idiot who tried to kidnap my friends, Sakura said as she looked at Koseru with an angry stare. I'm not going to give a drop of mercy to you for this. Let's go, Team Kakashi. Kakashi shouted as Neji and Sakura got into a fighting position. Hiroshi got into a somewhat fighting pose as Korone aimed her cannon at Koseru. I need more power. Koseru screamed as he looked at Naruto frantically. I need more. Give me more power. Koseru demanded as he picked up the weakened Naruto by the neck and began to squeeze viciously with both hands. Naruto began to struggle in Kosaru's grip, trying to pry the giant's hands from his throat as Koseru cut off his air supply. Koseru began to squeeze even harder, his eyes blood red as he watched Naruto choke in his hands. Naruto began to fade, his vision going hazy as he tried to stay conscious. Koseru watched as Naruto's eyes slowly closed before throwing him to the ground like garbage. Pathetic weakling didn't have anything left, Koseru said as he turned and looked at Team Kakashi, who was watching this with shock. Naruto? Junko said as she walked up to his body and shook him softly. Naruto, get the hell up. I know that you wouldn't fall this easily. Come on Naruto, get up. She began to cry softly, Kina and Fujiko patting her on the back as they all looked at Naruto's limp body with tears in their eyes. "You bastard." Sakura started as she looked at the body of her seemingly deceased best friend. "You killed Naruto? I will have no mercy on you." Sakura went running at Koseru, her fist glowing a faint green as she swung at him, Koseru catching her fist in midair. Koseru then began to squeeze Sakura's fist, Sakura wincing with pain as she struggled to get from Koseru's grip. Koseru then punched her in the chest, Sakura getting sent flying by the ultimate blow, crashing into a wall. She laid on against the wall, breathing heavily as Koseru lumbered over to finish her. Neji quickly jumped in front of him, prepared to attack. "You are in my radius," Neji warned as he began to attack Koseru with oppressive force, slamming his fist continuously into Koseru's chest as Koseru stood there and accepted the attacks. He then grabbed both of Neji's hands as Neji looked up in surprise. He then bashed his head into Neji's blood dripping down his forehead as Koseru finished with a kick to Neji's chest, knocking the prodigy away. Koseru turned as Kakashi stood behind him, his Sharingan eye uncovered. Koseru grinned as he poked Kakashi in the eye. Kakashi not expecting this as Koseru then gathered his chakra and slammed both of his fists into Kakashi's chest, Kakashi getting knocked through a wall by the attack. He then turned and looked at Kurone and Hiroshi, Hiroshi backing behind Kurone. "Can you beat this guy?" Hiroshi whispered as Kurone shook her head no. "My current level isn't enough to defeat an enemy on this level," Kurone replied bluntly as Hiroshi sighed. "We have to do something," Junko whispered to Kina and Fujiko as they put their heads together. "Naruto's gone, all of his friends are defeated. So what do we do?" "I have an idea, but it's risky," Fujiko replied as she pulled a small bottle from her pocket. "I keep this on me in case I ever needed to take out someone. It's a mana disruptor potion. If one of you can distract him, I can throw it on him and stop his mana from working. I guess it will have to be me," Junko answered as she looked around. She sneaked away as she retrieved her sword from a wall near the room Naruto escaped from. "You two will be nothing," Koseru screamed as he rushed at Kurone and Hiroshi, Kurone pushing Hiroshi back as Hiroshi cowered away. "Why don't you face me, coward?" a voice screamed as Koseru turned around and chuckled when he saw that Junko was there, wielding her sword. "What, you think you can beat me with that pathetic blade?" Koseru asked as he cracked his knuckles. "Oh, shame that you will have to die like your boyfriend, huh?" "Naruto, my boyfriend?" Junko asked as she blushed, Kina and Fujiko looking away behind her. Wait. No, I'm going to beat you. In your damn dreams maybe." Koseru screamed as he rushed at Junko, Junko holding her sword in front of her with determination. As he prepared to attack, a mysterious figure appeared and kicked him away, knocking him away as a red aura covered his body from head to toe. Naruto?" Junko stuttered as the figure turned around, indeed Naruto. He smiled at her gently as his eyes turned blood red like the Kyuubi. "Do it now, Fujiko," Naruto shouted as Fujiko looked at him confused. "Oh, right," Fujiko shouted back as she walked up and threw the potion onto Koseru, his muscles shrinking as the mana was disrupted. What did you do to me?" Koseru asked as he looked down at himself. "How could you do this to the ultimate power? I'll have Orochimaru kill you for this, you bastard. Give him a message for me when you see him in hell," Naruto replied softly. "How could we both meet the same fate at the hands of Naruto Uzumaki?" Naruto grinned as he rushed at Koseru and slammed a Odama Rasengan into his chest, Koseru screaming as his entire chest was caved away by the attack. As he sat there, barely alive, he tried to crawl away. "No, you won't be leaving here alive," Naruto said darkly as he lifted his hand to finish Koseru off. Suddenly, he was pushed slightly by a stream of wind, Koseru being picked up by a large amount of sand. "Gaara," Naruto shouted as he looked at the former Jinchuruki. "What are you?" "Naruto, you need to return back to the school," Gaara replied as he held Koseru in the sand. "You are not in control of your powers. You almost killed this man. That isn't like you. Now stop playing around and do what you are supposed to do." "I guess," Naruto replied as he looked at the ground. "So is everything okay?" Temari asked as she stood at the door with her giant fan. "Yeah, I'm going to return to the academy," Naruto replied as he sighed. "Let's go guys." Junko, Fujiko, Kina, Hiroshi, and Korone followed him as they all went back to the Leaf Village. Gaara and Temari bringing back Sakura, Neji, and Kakashi. Damn it Naruto, don't pull a stupid stunt like this again, understand? Tsunade shouted as Naruto sighed for the 10th time that day. Now I want you back at Constant Academy by tonight, understand? Yeah, whatever, Naruto answered as Tsunade sighed. Dismissed. Tsunade shouted as Naruto walked out the door, groaning. As Naruto brought everyone over to Ichiraku's, the vacation was a successful one. They were all able to finally relax and eat ramen, Iruka, Kakashi, Sakura, even Neji joining them. Naruto found himself happy once more, but knew that he had a lot of hardships ahead. Ring, ring. As Naruto's alarm clock buzzed loudly, Naruto sighed as he shifted to the other side of the bed and slammed his hand on the off button. He yawned loudly as he opened his eyes, wiping the sleep from them as he did. He looked around the room, his eyes beginning to focus on the environment around him. Korone, what are you doing? Naruto asked as he stared at the side of his bed, where Korone was hiding. Did you sleep in my bed again last night? I'm sorry big brother, Korone replied in a shrill voice as she hoisted herself onto Naruto's bed. I hope I didn't make you upset. Are you malfunctioning or something? Naruto asked as he looked at Korone skeptically. You have been acting weird ever since we got back from Konoha. I'm just trying to make you happy big brother, Korone answered as she snuggled up next to Naruto. Do you not like this personality? Do you have a specific preference? Naruto looked at her with a bewildered look before climbing out of his bed. He sighed as he pulled his school uniform from the dresser next to his bed and walked into the bathroom. After a brisk shower and getting dressed, Naruto was ready, walking out the bathroom with a smile. Korone looked up at him from the bed as she read a small booklet. Hey, what's that? Naruto asked as he pointed to the book. You studying for something? This is a book of personalities that men like, Korone explained as she showed his the cover. I'm trying to figure out which personality you would like best if I used based on your own personality. Why the hell are you doing that? Naruto asked as he opened his window, letting the fresh air flow through the room. I mean, it's not like you like me or anything, right? I don't know big guy, Korone replied in a wry voice as she stood up and walked over to him. She started to reach down for Naruto's belt buckle before Naruto slapped her hand away. You are the weirdest girl I ever met, Naruto said as he picked up his backpack from the dresser. I got to report to homeroom to see where I'm going for some kind of summer school I'm going to by some sea place. I will be accompanying you as your observation agent, Korone responded as Naruto grinned. Now that's the Korone I know, he replied as he headed out the door. As Naruto walked into the classroom, he was surprised that no one else was in the room. Only the teacher, nurse, magic researcher Mitsuko Torii. Oh, Naruto, Mitsuko said nervously as she spotted the blonde-haired teen. I didn't expect you to come to school today. Isn't today when we get to choose where we go in summer school or whatever? Naruto asked. It's called Seaside School Naruto, Mitsuko explained. It's also the place where… Well, that isn't important. Just please understand that we cannot allow you to go. Wait, what? Naruto asked with widened eyes. I want to go with my friends. You can't do this to me. He is allowed to go as long as he is escorted by me, a voice said as Korone waltzed into the room. As his observation agent, I have already spoken to my superiors about this and they agree as well. Well, I guess you are going then Naruto, Mitsuko replied as Naruto threw his fist in the air with excitement. But can you first sign these papers? What papers? Naruto asked as he looked down at the sheet in Mitsuko's hands. This just says if you get hurt I can examine you. Mitsuko began as Naruto walked out of the room. Wait, please sign Naruto. As Naruto and Korone walked out the room, he stopped as he began to think about why he almost didn't go to Seaside School. Korone? Naruto asked as Korone turned and faced him. Why was I almost not allowed to go to Seaside School? As Korone opened her mouth to respond, she was interrupted by someone behind them. That was where the Demon King first set up shop, the voice said as Naruto turned and seen that it was Lily. You mean the previous Demon King? Naruto asked as Lily nodded. So what does that have to do with me? Everything, Lily responded as Naruto looked at the ground with an exasperated look. You were determined to be the next Demon King. This is why they didn't want you to join everyone at Seaside School. Just be careful, understand? Why, I'm not evil, Lily. Naruto shouted as he stormed away, walking out the front door. Korone followed him as Lily watched him go, a serious expression on her face. As Naruto sat on the sun-bleached sand, his mind seemed to drift from the earlier events. Junko, Fujiko, and Kina sat next to him as Naruto sighed happily. "This is the best school ever." Naruto moaned happily as he closed his eyes. "To think we could do this during class." "Hey Naruto," a voice shouted as Naruto turned and seen Kina looking at him, her face 2 inches from his own. "Yes, Kina?" Naruto asked with an annoyed glance as Kina pointed up a small hill. "I heard that Hiroshi lives up there with his family, we should go visit." Kina exclaimed as Hiroshi appeared out of nowhere, shaking his head no. "That sounds like a bad idea." Hiroshi answered quietly as he looked up at the sun. "Let's just stay here and not have the day ruined." "Come on Hiroshi, let's go meet your family," Naruto said as he pulled himself up from the sand. "Might as well since we are all here, right?" Hiroshi sighed, not looking too happy about this. He motioned for everyone to follow him, everyone getting up as they followed Hiroshi up the hill. On top of the hill lied a small comfortable-looking house, Hiroshi pointing to it with an unhappy look. "This is my place," Hiroshi said as Naruto looked at him with concern. "Hey big brother," a voice screamed as a young girl walked out from the house. "It's been too long, huh? You haven't been home yet?" Naruto asked as Hiroshi ignored him. "So how's my hero brother?" Hiroshi's sister asked as Naruto looked at him with confusion. "Hero?" he asked as Korone pushed her way to him past all the girl. "It seems that Hiroshi must have been named a hero," Korone said as Naruto looked at her with a grin. "Hiroshi, a hero?" he asked as he chuckled. "This I would like to see. My big brother is the hero you meanie." Hiroshi's sister shouted at Naruto as Naruto began to laugh. "Yeah right, even if he is, like he would want to be a hero." Naruto exclaimed as Hiroshi looked at him with disgust. He walked away from the area, walking back down the hill. "What did I do?" Naruto asked as he watched Hiroshi leave. "Naruto, do you know what the job of a hero is?" Fujiko asked as Naruto shook his head no. The job of a hero is to kill the person that has been named or became the Demon King. Naruto looked at her with widened eyes as she said this, his entire mouth going dry as he heard this. "And if he has been named a hero, it is set in stone that he is going to kill you." Fujiko continued as Naruto looked down at the ground with widened eye. Beads of sweat began to drip from his forehead as he looked up at Fujiko. "So you are the Demon King, huh?" Hiroshi's sister asked with a grin. I wondered why you said so many terrible things. My brother is going to slaughter you, you pathetic monster. Your days are numbered, freak." As the young girl spoke these words, the feeling that Naruto used to feel at the village in his earlier days flowed through his body. Naruto walked away from the scene, walking back down the hill as he contemplated what Fujiko had told him. As he did, he heard the sound of slight laughter as someone followed him. He turned slowly as he was suddenly picked up by a gigantic beast, a man stepping from the shadows as he laughed maniacally. "So, you are the Demon King, huh?" the man asked with a grin. "I didn't think that you would be easy to capture like this. Now, you are helpless as my beast will absorb all of your mana that flows through your body." Naruto began to scream as his body started to glow red, the monster forcing Naruto to use his power. As he did, the octopus-like beast started to grow, being influenced by Naruto's mana. It gave off a red aura, its body growing wider and stronger by the more mana it absorbed. "Naruto!" a voice screamed as Naruto looked down and spotted Junko, Korone, Fujiko, Kina, and Hiroshi on the ground. "Naruto!" Hiroshi screamed as he looked at his best friend with concern. "Hold on." The octopus monster slapped him away as he tried to get close, Hiroshi floating to the bottom of the lake. "None of you will be doing anything." The man screamed as he appeared in front of the gang instantaneously. "I am Mr. X and none of you have a chance in hell of defeating me." "Shut it, dirtbag," Junko shouted as she unsheathed her sword. "Let's dance then if that's how you feel." Your love for this boy is apparent." Mr. X shouted as Junko blushed. Mr. X disappeared and appeared in front of Junko, punching her in the stomach. A opening." Mr. X shouted as Junko fell to her knees. "It was almost too easy." "Naruto!" Junko moaned out as she held her stomach. Naruto looked from the beast, his usual blue eyes going into the eyes of the Kyuubi. His aura surfaced even greater as the ground began to shake softly. Ha! Naruto screamed as he broke away from the giant beast, falling to the ground before Mr. X. So, are you ready to face me? Naruto asked as Mr. X grinned. Ah, a new contestant in the art of combat. Mr. X exclaimed as Naruto looked at him in confusion. Will you techniques be able to overcome my own? Well, we could always test that theory now, couldn't we? Naruto asked as he ran at X dodging the first punch Naruto threw. Naruto screamed loudly as he rushed at X and began to throw a barrage of quick attacks, X dodging them all with uncanny speed. You are not a challenge to me, Demon King. Mr. X shouted as he lashed his foot at Naruto's chin, Naruto taking the attack at full force. Naruto fell to the ground, blood dripping from his mouth as he gritted his teeth. Damn this guy, Naruto moaned as he stood up slowly. Guess it's time to give this guy a classic. Naruto made some hand signs and summoned 2 clones beside him. Alright, here we go. Rasengan. Naruto rushed at the fiend with his signature attack in his palm. Mr. X grinned as he used his speed to disappear and appeared to the side of Naruto. He grabbed Naruto's hand and wrenched it back, making Naruto hit himself in the chest with the Rasengan. Naruto screamed in pain as his own Rasengan teared through his chest, pushing him back with great force. Naruto slid to the ground, him sliding causing a mark in the ground where he slid. Your tricks aren't as great as mine, Demon King. Mr. X shouted as he danced around like a fool. Naruto pulled himself from the ground, his hands covered in blood as he held the wound that the Rasengan created. Naruto. Kina screamed as she covered her mouth, tears coming down her face. Naruto. Junko said weakly as she looked up at Naruto. Don't give in. Naruto removed his hand from his wound as everyone gasped. The wound was gone, just a patch of normal skin where the wound once was. Naruto closed his eyes, his red aura disappearing. I used up too much power, Naruto said as he looked at Mr. X with his normal blue eyes. I guess I'm running on just chakra now, huh? Alright, I didn't think you would push me this far. Sage mode. Naruto grinned as he looked at Mr. X, his eyes the eyes of the sage now. You are quite the challenger, Demon King, Mr. X said as he clapped his hands slightly. I guess me and my monster over there are going to have some fun, huh? I'll give you anything you give me back tenfolds, fool, Naruto replied as he removed his shirt. Let's do this right now. Meanwhile, Hiroshi had found himself inside a secret underwater cavern, looking around in surprise as he wiped the water from his eyes. Where am I? Hiroshi wondered as he looked in front of him and spotted a dull-looking sword. Is this? Hiroshi looked around slowly as he pulled the sword from the rock it was stuck inside of. The sword came out easily, much to Hiroshi's surprise. I am the legendary hero? Hiroshi whispered to himself as the sword began to glow. The sword disappeared as a small watch-looking unit appeared onto his wrist. What function would you like to use? A voice asked from the watch as Hiroshi looked down at it with confusion. What would you like to use? What is there? Hiroshi asked with confusion as the watch light up. How about brave mode? The watch asked as it began to explain the weaponry that came with this mode. Yeah, that mode, Hiroshi said as the watch began to glow again, Hiroshi finding himself in an all-blue armor. He looked at it in surprise as he suddenly felt himself lift up from the ground. What are your commands? The voice asked as Hiroshi sighed. Let's go save my friends, Hiroshi stated as he prepared to go. It seems you have a bit more fight in you, Demon Lord, X muttered as he witnessed the power of Sage mode. Naruto's eyes had changed, resembling the eyes of a toad now. His chakra had changed drastically, increasing beyond imagination. The Sage chakra flowed throughout his body, mixing with the mana of the Kyuubi to make one incredible warrior. So, round 2 then? Naruto asked with a smug grin as he wiped dried blood from the side of his mouth. Let's see what you can do now. Naruto grinned wildly as he went charging at X grinning as well as he went charging at Naruto. Both of them slammed their fists into each other's cheek, both of their faces caving it slightly from the blows. X and Naruto both went sliding across the dirt, steadying themselves as they prepared to clash. Demon Lord, you're quite the interesting subject. X shouted enthusiastically as Naruto went running at him. Naruto started throwing hundreds of punches at amazing speed. X barely able to dodge the blows as he tried to keep up with Naruto's newfound speed. Naruto grinned wider as he connected a blow to X's chin, blood spilling out of the monster's mouth. X grimaced slightly as he dropped his guard from the blow, leaving himself open for blows. Naruto didn't disappoint, taking the opportunity and slamming his fist into X's chest continuously, and then finishing the attack up with a mean uppercut to the chin. X choked as blood came rushing down his chin, the villain beginning to feel the effects of Naruto's attacks. X growled slightly, coughing as the blood made it hard for him to talk, which Naruto was loving. "This is all you can offer me?" Naruto asked as his eyes teased the evil man, making him feel almost inadequate compared to this supposed demon lord. "You attack and endanger my friend and this is it? I'll make you pay for this. Monster, attack!" X roared as the giant octopus-like creature emerged from the water once again, its tentacles going on to land and going after Naruto. Naruto prepared himself to strike, his eyes watching the tentacles as they reached out to grab him. Before he could even move, a mysterious man appeared before him, wielding what looked like an energy sword. "I'll take care of this, fall back and protect the others," the man demanded as Naruto looked at him with widened eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Naruto asked as the tentacles went at the mysterious man, the man cutting off 3 of the tentacles with just one swing of his blade. "I'm brave," the hero muttered as the tentacles fell before him. X backed up slowly as he looked at the 2 warriors before him. "This isn't possible," X exclaimed as he fell to his knees. "I don't understand how I can be outplayed in my own game." "This is over now," Brave muttered as he flew into the air and took off at the octopus creature, the creature roaring within the water as it was tackled by the hero. The octopus tried to struggle against the hero, but was cut down the middle by the energy blade. Brave flew up into the sky as the octopus let out a sickly roar and fell deep within the water drenched in the blood of the monster. "Who is this guy?" Naruto wondered as he watched this all occur with his eyes widened. "He seems almost like some kind of demon fighter." "Naruto!" Junko screamed as Naruto turned back, Kina being held captive by the sinister Mr. X. "It's over, you fool!" X boosted as he held what seemed to be a knife at Kina's neck. "I'll slit this bitch like a pig if you get any closer. If you even lay one hand on her, I'll kill you." Naruto roared as Brave landed on the ground beside him. "That goes double for me as well," he said as Naruto looked at him curiously. "Now give up this fight, you lose X." "Oh, now do I?" X asked as he prepared to slit Kina's neck. Naruto went running at him as Brave flew past him and slammed his fist into X's jaw. X went flying back as Brave continued to follow him within the air, punching him in the chest as he hovered above him. Naruto pulled his hand into the air, allowing the wind in the area to gather within his palm. Along with his chakra, he was able to create his wind Rasengan, pulling it back as he prepared to use it to finish X. As soon as Brave sensed the energy via his computer, he moved out the way as Naruto came lumbering forward. Rasengan! Naruto screamed as the Rasengan went into X's chest, X screaming in pain as his glasses fell from his face. His eyes were almost completely bloodshot as he fell to his knees, blood going down his neck as he fell to the ground. "Not bad," Brave commented as he looked at Naruto with a smile. Naruto frowned back at him, looking at Brave with complete annoyance. "Just who the hell are you anyway?" Naruto asked as Brave looked at him with a heroic smile. "I'm the guy who will put you in your place if you try anything foolish," Brave replied as Naruto growled, his hands balling up at his sides. "Oh yeah?" Naruto asked as he went running at Brave, flying up within the air as Naruto swung at him. Brave then lowered himself down just a bit and kneed Naruto in the chin, Naruto groaning as his teeth clicked together painfully. "You think that's funny?" Naruto asked loudly as Brave shrugged in response. "I'm just showing you what I can do," Brave answered as Naruto grinned. "Then let me return the favor if you don't mind." Naruto roared as he went running at Brave with his eyes flaring. "Okay. Let's see what you can do, big brother," Brave whispered as he went at Naruto. As the battle begun, Brave was intercepted by Junko as he ran at full speed at a tired-out Naruto. "Just what the hell are you doing, Hattori?" Naruto shouted as the blue-haired girl held her blade in Brave's radius. "This is my fight. I'll take this guy on." "Naruto, you've exhausted yourself," Fujiko explained as Naruto winced in pain, overcome by the sudden rush. "See? You won't last long against a hero in the condition you're in. Be thankful Junko is saving you. I'm not thankful, this is nothing. Naruto shouted as he tried to advance forward. This guy is toast. Naruto was unable to finish his sentence as he passed out from chakra exhaustion, falling face first into the pavement. Naruto, Brave and Junko exclaimed in unison as they both stopped their showdown to check out the wounded knucklehead. As Naruto laid on the ground, the sound of slight snoring filled the air, everyone taking a sigh of relief. Big brother, you are amazing. Brave thought as he watched the knucklehead shinobi rest, a smile on the hero's face. You never give in, even though you were damaged. If Junko didn't interfere, you would have fought me with every ounce of strength you have left. You don't deserve the title Demon Lord, you should be the hero. Hey, just where did Hiroshi go? Junko wondered as Brave looked up from his thought. I must go, but I shall return when I'm needed. Brave stated in a heroic voice as he fled the scene, transforming back into Hiroshi and the cut. I know just what Naru-chan needs, a big bowl of rice. Kina exclaimed as Junko and Fujiko sighed. Oh brother. As Naruto awoke, he yawned as the morning sun soaked his room in its light. Good morning Master Naruto. Korone shouted as she jumped on his bed, wearing a maid's outfit. How could I serve you today? Would you like breakfast in bed? Maybe a back rub and I feed you. Anything for you master. What are you doing Korone? Naruto asked as the green-haired android smiled in response. I'm trying out a new personality, does it turn you on? Korone asked, Naruto almost coughing up blood as he seen that Korone was not wearing any panties underneath this outfit. I see you found my secret. Do you like it? I'm getting in the shower now. Naruto responded as he dove into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. The blonde-haired shinobi sighed as he looked in the bathroom mirror, a ruffled hair, exhausted-looking teenager staring back at him. Wow, I must have slept for at least a week, Naruto commented as he brushed his hair back with his hand, wetting his hand with saliva. Well, that will do until I get out the shower I guess. Naruto took off his blood-stained outfit, getting in the shower. As the water rained upon the shinobi, the thought of everything he endured in his time at the academy ran through his head like a repeat of a television show. Well, it's been pretty fun, just as fun as going on a mission at home. Naruto exclaimed as he grinned. Well, let's get on with the day. He jumped out the shower, taking out the school outfit from off the hook on the bathroom door. As he emerged from the bathroom, clean and dressed, the gang was waiting for him as he exited. Hey, what's up? Naruto greeted as Fujiko, Junko, Kina, and Hiroshi all replied with a hello. Let's get going to school. Naruto, we have an issue. Lily greeted the blonde shinobi as he entered the academy. We have permission to skip first class to have an emergency meeting. Why, what's going on Lily? Naruto asked as the president did not reply. She only motioned for Naruto to follow her to the meeting room. Naruto shrugged as he followed her into the room, where all the fellow members were already in attendance. Welcome to our first emergency meeting of the Disciplinary Council, we are in the midst of a crisis. Lily announced as she tipped her witch hat so all could see her face. As you might know, an unknown person has been murdering fellow students, by sucking them dry of all their mana. Not just that, but some of the students were resurrected as zombies, yet still have no idea of what occurred to cause their death, meaning their mind was wiped as well. We cannot allow something as heinous as this to occur on our watch. It is up to us as the Disciplinary Council to stop anything that can put the student body in danger. Who the hell is doing that? Naruto asked angrily as he pounded his fist against the table. I haven't heard about this until now. We need to stop this guy, and now. Is there anyone they suspect yet? Whoever they suspect we need to take in. This. Yes, there is a suspect actually, Lily interrupted as she looked directly at Naruto. Several people have said this one person is no doubt the killer. Who is it? Naruto asked as he felt everyone staring at him. What? Something on my face? The suspect is you, Naruto Uzumaki, Lily stated as Naruto gasped. As the Demon King, you are naturally the first person people would suspect. You are the one who is foretold to bring chaos among us all. So, you all think it's me too, huh? Naruto asked quietly as he scanned the room. Yup, you do. Whatever, I'm outta here. As Naruto rose up to exit the room, he bumped into a lanky, slightly taller than himself teenager. He had a pale face, with piercing blue eyes and a grin plastered on his face. He wore the school uniform, meaning he was a student, but he was quite creepy. Sorry I'm late. I'm Kohaku Kodagawa, new member. The boy announced nervously as Naruto looked the strange boy up and down. I just got the message we were having a meeting, I'm so sorry. Kohaku, please take the seat before you, since Naruto has decided to leave, Lily responded as Naruto left the room, disgusted at all of them. Naruto, so they think it's you? Hiroshi asked as he and Naruto sat in the lunchroom, munching on a large apple. Naruto sat with his chin laid against the cold table, not even touching the ramen before him. Yeah, I wanted to just fade. Naruto mumbled as he sighed. Nothing I do will ever stop them from thinking of me as the Demon King. I just want to be an ordinary guy, ya know? I understand where you're coming from, pal. A voice responded as Kohaku sat his tray next to Naruto's. Name is Kohaku, we kinda met at the earlier meeting somewhat. Ha, so I hear that you're the Demon King? Dude, that's awesome. Just who are you? Naruto questioned as he glanced at the boy. I never seen you in class before. I just transferred to Japan from America when my dad got a new job out here, Kohaku explained. I'm from Japan originally, raised in America though. Found out I had magic abilities when I was younger. I lit a napkin on fire with nothing but a touch. So I was psyched to come here, I've always wanted to. Cool, your name is Kohaku? Hiroshi asked. I'm Hiroshi, and this is my big brother Naruto. And yeah, he is the Demon King. Wow, that is really sweet, Kohaku responded as he grinned. Can you show me what you can do? I want to see you in action. No way, I kinda refrain from doing Demon King stuff, Naruto answered. That doesn't help my case much when I do surprisingly. Hey, well why don't you come over to my dorm after school? Kohaku asked as Naruto shrugged. Why not, I guess, the blonde shinobi replied as he felt a set of very big boobs envelope his back in a hug. Oh, hey Fujiko. Hello my king, Fujiko responded, which resulted in a strange glance from Naruto, causing Fujiko to clear her throat. Sorry, this darn cold. How are you Naruto? Have you heard about the stuff going on around campus? Did you hear they are planning to bring more security and place them around campus? Who is this? Fujiko glanced at Kohaku, who was giving her a creepy smile. The aura that surrounded him was quite clouded, but Fujiko sensed that he dabbled in dark magic. This is Kohaku, new student from America, Hiroshi responded as Fujiko nodded. Why, what's wrong? Nothing, just a feeling. Fujiko responded as she looked down at an imaginary watch on her wrist. Wow, look at the time. I've got to get going, see you later. Fujiko exited the lunchroom in a hurry, giving Naruto a wave. Naruto waved back, as Kohaku watched the dark princess leave with a wicked expression on his face. Nothing shall stop me from awakening it. Kohaku muttered as Naruto glanced at the boy. What did you say? Naruto asked, but Kohaku Juicy laughed as he turned to the shinobi. Nothing, just how much I love this school. Kohaku shouted energetically. Did you see how hot that girl was? I love this place. As the school bell buzzed, all of the students of the academy swarmed outside, the weekend finally here. So, what's it like in America Kohaku? Hiroshi asked and he, Naruto, and Kohaku exited the academy. Well, it's a pretty big place, a lot of tourist attractions and tons of people, Kohaku answered between taking bites of a red delicious apple. But it's pretty lame compared to this place. I mean, who in America can say they go to a school of magic? It's like something out of a Harry Potter novel. Who is Harry Potter? Naruto questioned as he slurped on the broth from his instant cup of ramen. He's a character from the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling? Kohaku answered. Ah, never mind. So what's going on for the weekend? Well, Fujiko asked me to study with her tonight, Naruto replied, both Kohaku and Hiroshi flashing him a grin. No, not like that you idiots. I need some help in mana control. Fujiko offered to give me a hand. Sure Naruto, don't forget to bring some candles to set the mood, Hiroshi teased, which earned him a punch in the chest from Naruto. Wait, I thought you were the Demon King? Kohaku asked Naruto. Demon Kings are notorious for having massive amounts of mana, with perfect control over it. That's what makes them so fearsome. Again, I'm not the Demon King, Naruto reminded the new kid. They just said that when that stupid bird told me my future occupation. That should be proof enough. I can't control my mana for anything. Well, you aren't an adult yet, so it could just take some time to master it, Kohaku responded, Naruto moaning as he did. Look, I'd love to continue this conversation, but I've got to go meet up with Fujiko, Naruto stated as he advanced ahead of Kohaku and Hiroshi, giving them a wave. See you guys a little later, alright? Yeah, see you later Naruto. Kohaku exclaimed with a blatantly fake smile pasted on his face. Hey Hiroshi, can I ask you a question? It's so good of you to come study with me, my king cough. I mean Naruto, Fujiko gushed as she guided Naruto into her dorm room. I'll be glad to help you with your mana control. But first, we need to talk about something important. And what's that Fujiko? Naruto asked, making himself comfortable on Fujiko's small love seat. Naruto, it's about that new kid Kohaku. I don't trust him, Fujiko answered, sitting down next to Naruto. I think he has evil intentions, something about him is just off. Fujiko was interrupted by a bat-like creature flying into her room through the open window, the creature baring its fangs as it looked at Fujiko. Fujiko reached for her book of black spells, but it was knocked from her reach by the bat creature. The creature then slapped Fujiko across the face, causing her to be pressed up against the wall from the sheer force. Fujiko took a deep breath as she ducked from the bat creature's claws, which she narrowly avoided by ducking at the exact moment the bat creature swung its hand. She threw a vase that lay next to her at its chest, the bat demon using one of its wings to protect itself. It then let out a sonic wail, causing Fujiko to cover her ears. The sound was so dense though, this was not able to block out the sound. It rung through Fujiko's ears, causing her to be deafened. As it raised its hand to strike down Fujiko for good this time, the hand it raised up was pulled out the air, then thrusted behind its back. The bat creature let out a wail as a Rasengan was pressed into its back, causing it to be knocked into the wall above Fujiko. Fujiko shook her head, trying to get the sound out of her mind, her ears still recovering from the attack. Naruto, I won't be able to hear you for the moment, so don't ask me anything yet, Fujiko shouted, unknown to her how loud she was speaking. This is a demon, don't let it get into contact with your mana. Don't worry Fujiko. I'll finish this battle without any mana needing to be used, Naruto responded mostly to himself as he made the hand signs for the Kage Bushin no Jutsu, multi-shadow clone jutsu. As the bat creature recovered from the Rasengan attack, it bared its fangs at the incoming Naruto, who punched it in the chest as he and his clones homed in on the creature. The creature gave a small shriek as it swung wildly at Naruto and his clones, but the real Naruto had allowed himself to be camouflaged by his incoming clones, around 30 in total. He connected hands with one of his clones, the clone holding a Rasengan in its palm. Naruto threw the clone at the bat creature, which was occupied with the other clones that surrounded its sides. The clone Naruto hit it right in its chest, causing the bat creature to lose its breath. As the clones dispersed, the real Naruto was seeing, two clones are by his side. The bat creature squeaked in pain as it looked up at Naruto, its eyes glowing red. Naruto smirked as his eyes went from the clear blue they were to the eyes of the sage, Naruto holding up a true wind style Rasen Shuriken. The bat creature advanced to attack, Naruto throwing the Rasen Shuriken at the incoming assailant, which caused it to be flung out the window. Naruto and his clones watched as the Rasen Shuriken carried the creature toward the dying sun, and then exploded in a glorious blue light. Pretty good fireworks, right guys? Naruto asked his clones, who grinned in response. Naruto made the clones disappear as he rushed to Fujiko's side, which was beginning to be able to hear again. Naruto, that was a black demon creature, summoned by using dark magic, Fujiko said as she stood up, dusting off her clothes. Someone is trying to kill me, and I have an idea who it is. I'm the only person on this campus that can sense him, so he deemed me a threat. Naruto? So that didn't do the trick, did it? A voice asked as a masked individual floated outside Fujiko's window, looking down inside at Fujiko and Naruto. I expected for that to at least give you a challenge, but you're stronger than expected. Demon King. So, you sent that thing after me then? Naruto roared as the individual laughed, flying into the room. No, our conceited friend here was actually correct on her theory, but incorrect on one thing, the individual stated as he stood before Naruto and Fujiko. I was sending that creature to attack Ms. Itu, but just so I could see some of your untamed power, Demon King. I wanted to see if you have what you claim to have, this vast, almost unlimited power. And what would you concern yourself with my power? Naruto asked, giving the person an angry glance. Your power? No, it is not your power. That is why I am concerning myself with it, the man responded, a reddish-black aura surrounding his body. It is my father's power, the almighty demon king that reigned this world before he was sealed away by the hero who slayed him. He would never die, his power made sure of that. He was defeated, and then sealed away by the previous reigning hero. The only way they could guarantee he would never return. But they never guessed that he would have a son, now did they? Wait, you're the son of the previous demon king? Fujiko asked, almost in complete shock. How is that possible? I was conceived in the bowel of hell, deep in the belly of a cursed woman who was bestowed the gift of bearing the almighty demon king's son, the man answered. My father shall return to rain blood upon this land, to bring hell back to earth, where it shall remain. I'd never let you do such a thing, as long as I'm around. Naruto roared as he went into sage mode, taking off at the individual. The man laughed as he backhanded the incoming shinobi, causing him to be slammed up against a wall. Naruto growled as he pulled himself up, gathering a vermilion Rasengan in his right hand. He let out a small battle cry as he ran at the individual, who allowed Naruto to attack. Naruto pressed the Rasengan into the man's chest, but it did not damage him. Do you think you can harm me with your shinobi techniques? The man asked as he gathered a ball of red mana, holding it in Naruto's face. Naruto looked back with widened eyes as the foe unleashed the ball, covering Naruto in a red light. As the red light enveloped Naruto's body, a burning sensation covered the shinobi body from head to toe. Show me your power, Demon King, or you'll die, the man stated as Naruto looked up at him, still being burned by the ball of mana. I don't care what you do to me, I won't show you a damn thing. Naruto shouted as he tried to pull himself toward the man. Do what you want to me, I don't care. You are the type that wouldn't, aren't you? The man responded as he stroked his chin thoughtfully. Well, I see what will have to be done. He snapped his fingers, Naruto's body now free from the attack. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.